Chapter 459. This is the time, Taoist friend, when your countless puppets will prove their worth. Li Fan smiled mysteriously and whispered for a moment. Upon hearing this, Zhao Shuyuan's eyes lit up, and he nodded repeatedly. At the same time, in the fortified cities of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and within the various sect ruins in the wilderness, countless identical faces began to tell stories to those around them. The protagonist of the story is an ancient cultivator from the Heavenly Mechanism sect, who had been asleep for 1,000 years and had just awakened. This person possesses the secret techniques of the Heavenly Mechanism sect, holding a treasure called the Heaven-Earth Divination Dice. This artifact can communicate with yin and yang and understand the mysteries of creation. It can even see through time and foresee the future. If one were to receive guidance from this person, countless opportunities would be within reach. Not to mention defying fate, becoming rich overnight would be a trivial matter. He Zhenghao from Kongyansi is a living example. If you don't believe it, just inquire, and you'll know. In Zhao Shuyuan's description, Li Fan was portrayed as possessing godlike skills, comparable to the ancient, all-powerful beings. Such exaggerated words were naturally met with skepticism by most cultivators. They shook their heads, dismissing it as just another attempt by some young immortal to create a name for themselves. However, a small number of cultivators became intrigued by Li Fan. They began to inquire about the details from Zhao Shuyuan. But at this point, Zhao Shuyuan stopped talking. Having their curiosity piqued, they couldn't easily let it go. Their curiosity became unbearable, leading many cultivators to inquire with their friends from Kongyansi. They were shocked to discover that perhaps this was not just baseless talk. In Kongyansi, there really was a group of cultivators who had made huge profits under Li Fan's guidance. Unable to contact Li Fan, they turned to He Zhenghao and other cultivators who had participated in Li Fan's first recruitment. At this point, He Zhenghao was a bit overwhelmed, as countless inquiries flooded in, leaving him at a loss for how to respond. He could only reply instinctively. The other cultivators who participated in the recruitment did the same. Thus, the information was confirmed. Some were greatly disappointed, as the first round of recruitment had only a mere 200,000 contribution points. This seemed like an obvious scam, just a simple scheme to rob Peter to pay Paul, something they themselves could easily pull off. But others, after researching the list of participating cultivators, were secretly delighted, thinking they had found a rare opportunity. They discovered that one of the cultivators on the list was named Zhou Peng. Although Zhou Peng's cultivation was not high, he had a close relationship with Elder Gongsun of the Tianji Hall in Kongyansi. Even cultivators outside of Kongyansi had heard of Gongsun Shishuan's name. If Li Fan were truly a scammer, would Zhou Peng have fallen for it so foolishly? Considering that Zhou Peng had nearly bet his entire fortune on each recruitment, it seemed that this ancient Heavenly Mechanism sect cultivator was indeed extraordinary. After another round of filtering, although the number of cultivators inquiring about Li Fan's contact information decreased, their enthusiasm grew stronger. In the Qinli Hall, Li Fan sat calmly, listening to the feedback from Zhao Shuyuan without showing any emotion. After letting the rumors brew for more than 10 days, as public discussion about Li Fan began to decline, Li Fan said in a deep voice, "Taoist Zhao, it seems we can proceed with the next step." "Indeed, Taoist friend. Watch my methods," Zhao Shuyuan replied with a chuckle, his aura once again becoming subdued. At the same time, throughout the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, whether it was cultivators watching from the sidelines or those desperately seeking Li Fan's contact information, they all received new information from Zhao Shuyuan. Recently, too many cultivators have been seeking out Li Fan, causing him great distress. Facing numerous accusations of being a fraud, Li Fan decided to prove his abilities. So, he entrusted Zhao Shuyuan to relay a unified message. The time was set for 3 days later. As soon as this news broke, it caused a sensation. Those who believed in Li Fan were quietly excited. Those who had always thought Li Fan was a fraud were full of disdain, waiting for him to make a fool of himself. Regardless of belief, the topic was on everyone's mind, including those who were merely curious bystanders. For a time, the vast majority of mid to low-level cultivators in the 10,000 Immortal Alliance were looking forward to Li Fan's performance in 3 days. As for those at the soul transformation stage or above, they were not very concerned with these small matters. Only a few who were extremely bored paid any attention. Amidst the discussions of countless cultivators, the appointed time finally arrived. The once desolate area outside the Qinli Hall was now crowded with people. They all waited eagerly, watching Zhao Shuyuan, anticipating Li Fan's speech. Numerous Zhao Shuyuan puppets moved in unison, their expressions identical. He scanned the crowd with a solemn look. Clearing his throat, Zhao Shuyuan spoke in a deep voice. Taoist Li Fan has said that to prove he is not a fraud, and to defend the honor of the Heavenly Mechanism sect, he is willing to sacrifice his lifespan to activate a secret technique. He has successfully foreseen the future once again. Zhao Shuyuan paused slightly, holding the crowd's attention. After a moment, he loudly declared, he saw that, not long from now, an item called Samantabhadra True Leaf will experience a massive price increase. It will even cause a stir throughout the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings fell silent. Before the crowd could react, Zhao Shuyuan swiftly retreated into the Qinli Hall. With a bang, the doors slammed shut. No matter how much the crowd outside called out, there was no response. Samantabhadra True Leaf, what is that? A price surge? Is this for real? Most of the onlookers were puzzled, unsure whether to believe it. However, some quick thinkers had already rushed back to the Tianquan mirror to check its price. They were astonished to find that at the moment Zhao Shuyuan made his declaration, the price of the Samantabhadra True Leaf had suddenly surged from 265 points. Everyone, stay rational. The price surely rose because too many people bought it at once, one knowledgeable cultivator analyzed calmly, trying to persuade the others. But this guy named Li Fan is obviously a scammer who must have hoarded a large stockpile of it beforehand. He's just waiting for everyone to drive the price up so he can sell. However, the price increase was happening right before their eyes. If the price were to drop later, as long as they sold before it fell, they could still make a small profit, right? More people, seeing the rising price of the Samantabhadra True Leaf, couldn't resist and bought a small amount. Though individual purchases were not large, the number of cultivators was considerable. As a result, the price increase of the Samantabhadra True Leaf accelerated. In a short time, it had risen from 265 points to 300 points. Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan were frantically buying up the stock in a courtyard somewhere in the Tianshu state. Taoist Tantai, disaster. Look at the price of the Samantabhadra True Leaf. It's 310. No, it's 320 now. And by the time Tantaikan realized it, the price had already reached 340 points. This is bad. Forget the price. Quickly buy up all the Samantabhadra True Leaf available on the market. He shouted in frustration. Chapter 460. To better manipulate prices and reap profits, Tantaikan and his associates released nearly half of the Samantabhadra True Leaf into the market, creating a false impression of supply. This was done to attract unsuspecting cultivators, who would then be harvested by them. However, at this moment, the Samantabhadra True Leaf, which once brought them profit, had become their death warrant. The moment the Samantabhadra True Leaf were snapped up by frantic cultivators, Tantaikan realized that if they didn't take immediate action, they would soon face a disastrous situation. Thus, Tantaikan made a decisive order, to spare no expense in retrieving the Samantabhadra True Leaf. Stimulated by this, the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf skyrocketed, reaching an incomprehensible level for the cultivators. In an instant, the price surged from over 300 points to 400 points, and it seemed to have no limit in its rise. This extremely abnormal situation left the observing cultivators speechless. Something is off. This thought involuntarily surfaced in everyone's mind. Could it be that Samantabhadra True Leaf has some unknown use? Caught up in their imaginations, the cultivators who had already bought in were secretly celebrating, excitedly watching the price continue to soar. Those who previously believed that Li Fan's prediction was merely a scam, although still skeptical, were tempted to join the buying frenzy as they saw those who took action getting rich in an instant. As Tantaikan and his group watched the madness unfold, many of them began to look grim. If this continued, they might lose all the profits they had gained over the years. Tantai Taoist. Tantaikan waved his hand. We have no choice but to take the loss this time. Keep buying. As long as we survive this ordeal, we can always find a way to recover. A hint of ferocity flashed across his handsome face. The others, hearing this, could only grit their teeth and continue competing with the increasingly frantic cultivators. As time slowly passed, their contribution points were spent like flowing water, but the deficit they faced was enormous. It was like trying to fill a bottomless pit. Even though they were all wealthy, they gradually found themselves running out of resources. But seeing that Tantaikan still hadn't changed his mind, they wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads and nervously continued to repurchase the leaves. The tension in the air was palpable. At this moment, Tantaikan took out a flashing communication talisman. After checking it, his expression eased slightly. After sending a message, he regained his calm and composed demeanor. Seeing this, the others thought that there had been a turning point and also breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, in the Qinli Hall, in the previous mass purchase, Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan had already bought a large number of Samantabhadra True Leaf at a low price. They were now smiling as they watched the price skyrocket. However, out of caution, Li Fan decided to sell a portion of the Samantabhadra True Leaf to secure his gains. Under Li Fan's persuasion, Zhao Shuyuan also gradually sold some of his stock. As they were discussing their next move, Zhao Shuyuan suddenly froze. A moment later, he smiled and said to Li Fan, "Tantaikan has sent a message asking for a favor. Would you like to hear it?" "No harm in listening," Li Fan said casually. Ahem. Zhao Shuyuan cleared his throat, mimicking Tantaikan's voice. "Brother Zhao, it's wise to leave room for future encounters. How about doing me a favor this time?" Li Fan chuckled. However, he didn't respond rashly but instead asked Zhao Shuyuan, "Brother Zhao, what do you think?" Zhao Shuyuan sneered, "It's just a junior from the Tantai family, does he really think he can talk about favors with me? Maybe if his ancestor came, it would be more appropriate." Li Fan's heart stirred but didn't press further. He clapped and praised, "Taoist Zhao, you are truly formidable." Then, he suddenly said, "However, there's no harm in agreeing to their request." This statement greatly surprised Zhao Shuyuan. Zhao Shuyuan looked at Li Fan in disbelief. "You don't seem like someone who would suddenly grow a soft heart. Why are you showing mercy now?" "Not at all." Li Fan shook his head, "It's just another opportunity to make a profit." Talking business piqued Zhao Shuyuan's interest. He quickly asked, "What do you mean?" "In my earlier calculations, I saw not only the price surge of Samantabhadra True Leaf. I also foresaw that the impact of this turmoil would be so great that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance would eventually be forced to intervene to stabilize the situation," Li Fan explained slowly. "And it won't be long before this happens." "Oh, you mean that soon, the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf will fall back down?" Zhao Shuyuan quickly understood. "However, the exact timing is hard to predict, it could be at any moment. If we haven't sold all our Samantabhadra True Leaf before the 10,000 Immortals Alliance intervenes, the extra stock might end up worthless," Li Fan continued. "Therefore, it would be wise to negotiate a favorable price with Tantaikan and sell all our stock to them. This way, we reduce our risk, make another substantial profit, and even gain a favor from Tantaikan." Li Fan's explanation was clear. Zhao Shuyuan's eyes lit up, and he laughed heartily, "Taoist Li Fan, you are truly a business genius. Let's do it your way." He immediately closed his eyes, clearly eager to reply to Tantaikan. Li Fan, meanwhile, stared at the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf still climbing in the Tianquan mirror, calculating how to respond to the upcoming turmoil. A short time later, Zhao Shuyuan emerged from his trance. "It's done. Tantaikan has agreed to buy all our Samantabhadra True Leaf at 1,300 contribution points per leaf. Moreover, he promised to fulfill 3 of our requests within his capabilities. I believe that's the limit of what he can bear, so I took the liberty of signing the contract," Zhao Shuyuan explained. "No problem, it's a minor issue," Li Fan replied nonchalantly, handing over the Samantabhadra True Leaf to Zhao Shuyuan to complete the deal. Li Fan glanced at the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf in the Tianquan mirror. 930 points per leaf, and it was still rising, with no sign of stopping. On the surface, it seems Tantaikan and his group have profited. But Li Fan smirked inwardly, waiting for the final result from the Tianquan mirror. Shortly after Zhao Shuyuan reported the completion of the transaction, a familiar, cold, and mechanical voice echoed in the minds of all cultivators in front of the Tianquan mirror. It was exactly as Li Fan had heard in his past life. Due to the abnormal and significant price fluctuations of Samantabhadra True Leaf in recent days, to ensure the stable and harmonious development of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, the following announcement is made. Chapter 461. What happened next was entirely predictable. Amid the chaos caused by cultivators desperately fleeing for their lives, the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf leaves plummeted rapidly. After just surpassing the 1,000-point mark, the price dropped like a waterfall. This spectacular sight left Zhao Shuyuan in awe. "Your prediction skills are truly remarkable, fellow Taoist. If it weren't for your warning, I might have ended up just like them. I can already imagine the countless cultivators whose Dao hearts have been shattered. Zhao Shuyuan said with a tone of schadenfreude. Meanwhile, in Tianshu Prefecture, Tantai Kan, who had just completed a transaction and was secretly congratulating himself on his good luck, suddenly turned pale when he heard the announcement from the Tianshuan mirror. He watched helplessly as the price of the Samantabhadra true leaf he had just bought for the astronomical sum of 1,300 points crashed. Many couldn't bear the shock, spitting blood and fainting on the spot. Fellow Taoist Tantai, the remaining conscious cultivators looked at Tantai Kan with resentment, hoping the leader of the Tantai family could come up with a solution. Tantai Kan's face turned ashen. From the very beginning, it felt as though an invisible hand had been manipulating the situation from behind the scenes, leaving him no time to react. He even began to suspect that this whole event might be a conspiracy targeting the Tantai family. Perhaps Zhao Shuyuan and that heavenly mechanism sect cultivator Li Fan were nothing more than distractions orchestrated by the enemy. As various possible targets flashed through his mind, Tantai Kan started to actively think of ways to salvage the situation. The loss this time was too great. Even though his position in the family had become increasingly stable over the years, he might still face punishment. His brothers might even use this as an excuse to attack him. No, I must recover some of the losses. Gritting his teeth, an idea formed in Tantai Kan's mind. Spread the word about our recent discovery, he said in a deep voice. What? No, Tantai, stay calm, we haven't reported this to the Immortal Alliance yet. The others were shocked and quickly tried to dissuade him. But Tantai Kan's mind was made up, and since he was responsible for most of this secret discovery, they had no choice but to comply. Using their own methods, they spread the news into the market. Meanwhile, on 10,000 Immortal Island, where Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan were tallying their recent gains, they noticed that the decline in Samantabhadra true leaf had begun to slow. Although the price was still gradually decreasing, the collapse had started to stabilize. What's going on? The price of Samantabhadra true leaf is more resilient than I expected, Li Fan said, glancing at Zhao Shuyuan. Zhao Shuyuan paused for a moment, then replied with a strange expression, word is spreading that crafting artifacts from large quantities of Samantabhadra true leaf can reduce the lifespan absorbed by the devouring white mist. Moreover, it can also guide one through the maze of white mist. Zhao Shuyuan narrowed his eyes, clearly surprised by this revelation. Li Fan was taken aback. Is it true? Judging by the market's reaction, it doesn't seem to be a baseless rumor, Zhao Shuyuan said solemnly. It seems Tantai can leak this secret to minimize his losses. Who would have thought Samantabhadra true leaf had such a use? If they can resist the devouring white mist, this could change the landscape of the Xuanwang realm, he muttered, seemingly planning to quietly buy back the leaves. So that's why its price steadily increased in the previous life, Li Fan realized. Having spent years in the abyss, Li Fan was all too familiar with the terror of the devouring white mist. If he had known about the power of the Samantabhadra true leaf back then, the Tianshuan spirit locking formation within the mist wouldn't have been so painstaking to build. With these leaves, it's even possible to explore deeper into the maze. And in the previous life, until I turned into an object and completed the Tianshuan spirit locking formation, Tantai Kan never disclosed anything about this. The news was shocking. Both Li Fan and Zhao Shuyuan fell into deep thought, and the hall was silent. The Tantai family is interesting. Discovering such important information and not reporting it in time, Zhao Shuyuan eventually broke the silence. What kind of background does the Tantai family have? Li Fan asked, continuing the conversation. The head of the Tantai family, Tantai Liruo, is a Dao integration immortal sage and one of the 3 leaders of the Bureau Hall headquarters of the Immortal Alliance. Because of their low-key conduct, the Tantai family has remained relatively unknown to outsiders. Only when you reach a certain level do you realize how terrifying the Tantai family truly is. Zhao Shuyuan explained to Li Fan. However, the Bureau Hall isn't solely under the control of the Tantai family. Given the scale of this mistake, Tantai Liruo will have to provide some explanation. Zhao Shuyuan's tone suddenly turned curious. I don't think Tantai Kan is a fool, so why did he make such poor decisions this time? Logically, this kind of critical information could have helped the Tantai family secure an even stronger position. But he threw it away for a little profit. Li Fan pondered for a moment before analyzing. Perhaps, this person isn't really that foolish. After all, the Tantai family is the Tantai family, and Tantai Kan is Tantai Kan. Though it sounded convoluted, Zhao Shuyuan seemed to grasp the meaning behind Li Fan's words. Afterward, the two chatted casually for a while before agreeing to collaborate again if the opportunity arose. Li Fan then used a secret passage within the hall to quietly return to the Tianquan mirror, avoiding the angry crowd of cultivators outside. Calming his thoughts, Li Fan began to assess his gains. He had acquired the Samantabhadra True Leaf at around 300 or 400 points each and sold most of them to Dantaikan for 1,300 points. Even after accounting for a small portion sold in between, his overall profit had quadrupled. Subtracting the unexpected losses from purchasing Spirit Mist Grass, Li Fan's wealth had grown from just over 5 million contributions to a staggering 18.6 million. However, Li Fan was no longer a naive newcomer to the cultivation world. Facing such enormous wealth, he remained calm and composed. He skillfully opened the Tianquan Mirror's shopping list, continuing to purchase items needed for trading with the Empire and selecting objects that might be useful for future cultivation. Unfortunately, his current access level was still limited, leaving him lamenting over the treasures he couldn't yet obtain. The days of lavish spending didn't last long. As expected, a voice soon echoed from the Tianquan Mirror, summoning him to the martial arts hall for an investigation. They wanted to determine whether he had maliciously manipulated the market, potentially destabilizing the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Chapter 462. The last time Li Fan was investigated by the Tianji Hall due to the green ox cart incident was still fresh in his mind. Now, he found himself once again in the central core area of the 10,000 Immortal Island. Passing by the formation hall, he continued inward until he reached a building with a stone monument inscribed with the word, Martial, at its entrance. He paused in front of it. The moment he saw the word, Li Fan felt a suffocating, oppressive atmosphere descend upon him. It was as if several illusions appeared before his eyes, and the next moment, it seemed that blades and swords would be drawn upon him. The calligraphy is good, but it still lacks a certain essence compared to the chaos stone I saw before, Li Fan thought to himself, suppressing his instinctual urge to fight back. With a stern expression, he walked into the martial hall without showing any emotion. Unlike the formation hall, which was known for its overlapping spaces accessed via teleportation arrays, the main feature of the martial hall consisted of numerous giant stones floating in the air. The jagged stones, scattered like stars across the sky, varied greatly in shape, some resembled humans or beasts, others like mountains or rivers. On top of these giant stones, one could vaguely see pavilions, plants, and even the occasional figure flying by. However, the flying stone on which Li Fan stood was particularly special. It was barren and smooth, almost like a mirror. Faint lines of light seemed to flow beneath the surface of the stone. As soon as Li Fan stepped onto the stone, a formation was activated, and he felt himself being uncontrollably moved to the center of the floating stone. An inexplicable energy surged up from beneath his feet, binding him like invisible chains. At the same time, as Li Fan looked up, the surrounding flying stones, like stars, began to undergo mysterious changes. Initially, the area where Li Fan stood was an inconspicuous corner of the starry sea. But once he was restrained, the scenery above shifted, as if the stars were revolving around him. In an instant, Li Fan seemed to be at the center of the starry sea, becoming the absolute focus of this space. He also sensed countless gazes hidden behind the giant stones, all converging on him. This was true, attention from all sides. Each gaze was as heavy as a mountain. If it were any other cultivator, unaccustomed to such a scene or lacking strong mental fortitude, they would have collapsed to their knees on the spot. Yet, Li Fan remained calm and collected, his expression unchanged. After a brief standoff, a solemn voice echoed through the stone sea. Li Fan, cultivator, due to the abnormal price fluctuations of the Samantabhadra True Leaf, you are summoned here to undergo investigation. This investigation will be conducted by the Martial Hall of Kangyan, with the cooperation of the Tianji Hall and the Administrative Hall. Due to the significant impact and extremely malicious nature of this incident, the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance has dispatched a special envoy to oversee the entire process. In the spirit of fairness, justice, and transparency, this investigation will not be kept confidential and will be subject to the supervision of all members of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. After a long preamble, the booming voice finally got to the main point. Li Fan, during the investigation, you are allowed to defend yourself. But you will be held accountable for the truthfulness of every word you say. If any concealment or deceit is discovered, you will be punished according to the severity of the offense, in line with the Immortal Alliance's laws. The words echoed in his mind, and Li Fan nodded to indicate his understanding. Now, I declare the investigation officially begins. Marshal Hall, please have Jin Chongcheng recount the details of this incident. A flash of light appeared, and a cultivator wearing the uniform of the Marshal Hall of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance appeared in midair above Li Fan. Standing above Li Fan, he looked up at the countless floating stones in the sky and began to speak. The abnormal price fluctuations of the Samantabhadra true leaf began 16 days ago, triggered by a statement made by this cultivator, Li Fan. He spread the message through Zhao Shuyuan that the price of the Samantabhadra true leaf would skyrocket. Afterward, Jin Chongcheng concisely summarized the events leading up to the incident. As he spoke, scenes began to appear on the sky screen, a graph depicting the price fluctuations of the Pu Xian true leaf, images of cultivators frantically buying it, and the aftermath of the Tianxuan mirror's stabilization, showing countless cultivators suffering heavy losses. Furthermore, we noticed that before the price of the Samantabhadra true leaf rose, cultivator Li Fan had already purchased a large stock. He sold it at the peak, making a substantial profit. Based on this, we suspect that cultivator Li Fan disseminated false information, exploited the herd mentality of the public for profit, and maliciously disrupted the stability of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, Jin Chongcheng added. After he finished speaking, the Marshal Hall fell into silence. Li Fan felt the weight of the gazes on him increase. If it were any ordinary cultivator, they might have already paled and confessed under the pressure. However, Li Fan raised his head and interrupted Jin Chongcheng, I have an objection. Spreading false information, where does that accusation come from? Yes, I did make a bit of money in this incident. Ignoring the killing intent in the gazes directed at him, Li Fan continued, but as cultivators, pursuing profit is only natural. I have the ability to predict the future, and I used it to make a profit. What's wrong with that? And the subsequent price trend of the Samantabhadra true leaf matched my predictions. Doesn't that just prove the accuracy of my foresight? Li Fan argued righteously. Whispers spread through the Marshal Hall. Silence. As for whether using predictive techniques for profit is legitimate or not, we ask Elder Gongsun Shishuan of the Tianji Hall to speak. A flash of light replaced Jin Chongcheng with a young scholar who appeared to be in his early 20s. Despite his handsome appearance, he looked somewhat listless. It's him. Li Fan narrowed his eyes slightly as he recognized the person and nodded in acknowledgement. This Gongsun Shishuan was the very same cultivator Li Fan had encountered during his previous investigation by the Tianji Hall. The mysterious aura emanating from him had left a deep impression on Li Fan. After exchanging polite greetings with Li Fan, Gongsun Shishuan lightly coughed and began to speak slowly. The stance of our Tianji Hall has never changed. The results of predictive techniques can certainly be used as a reference for future actions. If not, why would our Tianji Hall even exist? We do it, so naturally, there's no reason to forbid other cultivators within the alliance from doing the same. Gongsun Shishuan's words were quite fair and made sense. Li Fan nodded repeatedly as he listened. However, at that moment, Gongsun Shishuan's tone changed, and he fixed his sharp gaze on Li Fan. But, I question whether this cultivator Li Fan truly possesses the ability to predict the future. If he genuinely predicted that the price of the Samantabhadra true leaf would skyrocket, then our Tianji Hall believes he is innocent. But if, a cold glint flashed in Gongsun Shishuan's eyes. If this was fabricated out of thin air by him, we suggest that he be sentenced to death. Chapter 463. Gongsun Shishuan's tone was filled with undisguised killing intent. Well then, please prove yourself, Taoist friend, he said coldly, staring at Li Fan. Now, all the pressure shifted to Li Fan. More and more eyes from all directions focused on him. Since Taoist friend claims to be able to deduce future events, why not demonstrate here and now? Gongsun Shishuan demanded, his voice leaving no room for Li Fan to refuse. If you can accurately predict the rise and fall of specific item prices, deducing something else should be a simple task. Li Fan hesitated for a moment, but had no choice but to agree. In that case, I shall make a humble attempt. He clasped his hands in salute and took out the heaven-earth divination dice that he had prepared. Closing his eyes, he stood motionless. The entire venue instantly fell silent, and everyone stared intently at Li Fan's next move. Within the jade slips he had obtained from the relics of the heavenly mechanism sect, there were indeed a few future deduction techniques. However, these were low-level spells, with a success rate so low that even hitting 1 out of 100 would be considered lucky. After studying them carefully, Li Fan roughly grasped their mechanics. They were enough to put on a show but certainly not capable of actually predicting anything. He knew that with countless eyes watching him, he couldn't be too bold. He was prepared to flee immediately if his act was exposed. Simultaneously, he activated the secret technique, Sky Shrouding Palm, and a mysterious aura instantly enveloped his body. The heaven and earth divination dice floated in front of Li Fan and began to spin rapidly. The 20 facets of the dice flashed with fragmented, fleeting images. Li Fan knew that even if these scenes passed by in a blink, they would not escape the eyes of the skilled cultivators present. Therefore, the images shown by the heaven and earth divination dice weren't just random, they were real events from his past life, ones he would experience in the future. Truth mixed with lies, falsehood hidden within truth. Only then could he deceive the onlookers. However, no matter how realistic it appeared, Li Fan knew that this fake act couldn't withstand close scrutiny. As the heaven and earth divination dice spun faster and faster, a scene of utter darkness began to emerge. Li Fan made his body tremble uncontrollably, his face growing paler by the second, with fear spreading across his features. Using the creation furnace art, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and exclaimed, "The Tianxuan lock of spirit, the union of Zan and Huang." At that moment, the heaven and earth divination dice lost all its brilliance and stopped spinning, with all 20 facets now pitch black. Li Fan collapsed weakly to the ground, looking utterly drained. The crowd in the martial hall erupted in shock. No one could remain calm after hearing the words, "The Tianxuan lock of spirit, the union of Zan and Huang." The implications were simply too terrifying. At that moment, a figure dressed in black, whose face was obscured, appeared out of thin air. He ignored the gravely injured Li Fan and instead looked at Gongsun Shishuan. Taoist Gongsun, the figure clearly sought Gongsun Shishuan's opinion. He suspected that this cultivator, Li Fan, might just be putting on a show. But, not being proficient in deduction arts himself, and with Li Fan allegedly being an ancient cultivator who had fallen into slumber in ancient times, there was a possibility that ancient methods differed from modern ones. Moreover, the conclusion Li Fan had deduced was indeed alarming. To be cautious, the figure decided to defer to an expert's judgment. Gongsun Shishuan's lips moved as he silently repeated the words Li Fan had just deduced. His expression grew increasingly grim. A painting appeared in front of him, slowly unfurling. The canvas was originally blank, but as Gongsun Shishuan waved his hand like a brush, colors began to fill the scene. Something seemed to be forming on the painting. However, the act of creating this painting seemed to be a huge drain on Gongsun Shishuan's strength. Already looking a bit sickly, his condition worsened as his back began to hunch under an invisible weight, slowing his movements. Finally, as the image on the painting became clearer, Gongsun Shishuan's hand trembled violently. He seemed to encounter an immense force, unable to complete the final stroke no matter how hard he tried. A look of frustration crossed Gongsun Shishuan's face. He bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. As the blood splattered into the air, he clenched his fists and forcefully completed the painting, using his blood as ink and his fists as brushes. When everyone in the martial hall, including Gongsun Shishuan himself, turned to see the content of the painting, a brilliant green light burst from the canvas, flooding the hall and spreading in all directions. The first to be hit was Gongsun Shishuan himself. Already exhausted from forcibly completing the deduction, he had no strength left to defend himself. Caught off guard, he was struck head-on. Ah! A scream of agony escaped from Gongsun Shishuan as his body dissolved into the green light. Only a trace of black mist remained, drifting away to an unknown destination. Damn it, a backlash from the heavenly mysteries. Elder Gongsun. The sudden turn of events left the cultivators in the martial hall in utter shock. But soon, they had their own problems to worry about. The green light spread like a tide, and everything it touched, whether strange boulders or living creatures, disappeared without a trace, as if melting into water. The black-robed cultivator's face darkened as he tried to stop the green light's spread, but to no avail. The source of this green energy was mysterious and impossible to resist. Left with no other choice, he was forced to retreat. In mere moments, the public trial had turned into a race to see who could escape fastest. Amidst the desperate screams of the cultivators, the scene grew more chaotic and terrifying. The moment Li Fan saw the familiar green light from Gongsun Shishuan's deduction painting, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. Although he wasn't sure what had triggered it, or why Gongsun Shishuan's deduction had summoned the power of the mysterious net, Li Fan didn't hesitate to slip away unnoticed, blending in with the panicking crowd as they fled from the martial hall. The strange phenomena at the martial hall on 10,000 Immortal Island quickly caught the attention of other cultivators on the island. The once magnificent building trembled before collapsing in a series of violent shakes. Just as the green light threatened to continue spreading outward, a rainbow beam of light shot down from the sky. Descending upon 10,000 Immortal Island, countless transparent runes surged from the rainbow light, forming a massive net that captured the dispersing green light. The crisis was swiftly resolved. Amidst the fleeing crowd, Li Fan bowed his head slightly, for the newcomer was none other than Lu Shichen, the chief formation master of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's Strategy Formation Hall. Chapter 464. Lu Shichen gazed at the now obliterated martial arts hall on 10,000 Immortal Island, her brows slightly furrowed. Faint green threads appeared, twining around her fingertips. She stared at this familiar yet strange green glow, a trace of surprise flashing in her eyes. Even though the Kongyan Sea was a remote place, very few cultivators knew of Lu Shichen's true identity. However, under her overwhelming aura, she remained silent, and the entire 10,000 Immortal Island was eerily quiet. The cultivators did not dare to look at her directly, all bowing their heads in deference, much like Li Fan. At the same time, they were guessing in their hearts the identity of this female cultivator. Finally, two figures flew out from the island's central administrative hall to greet her. A man and a woman, none other than Xian and Hongxi, the only two soul transformation true monarchs in the Kongyan Sea. Greetings, Chief Lu, they bowed in unison, a trace of nervousness evident on their faces. For both leaders of the Kongyan Sea to show such deference, it was clear this was an extraordinary figure. The other cultivators, who had bowed their heads in submission, were both shocked and filled with curiosity. They secretly wondered why such an important figure like Chief Lu had come to this remote corner of the world. Was it for this mysterious green light? No need for formalities. There is urgent business at hand. Lu Shichen glanced coldly at the cultivators on 10,000 Immortal Island and said, "From now on, the island is under lockdown. Without my orders, no one is permitted to leave." As she spoke, she pointed toward the sky. Transparent patterns spread from the center, quickly enveloping the entire island. I have already applied to cut off the connection between this place's Tianshuan mirror and the outside world. Conventional communication methods have also been blocked by me. Until the matter is thoroughly investigated, you are responsible for maintaining order on the island. Hongxi, hearing this, immediately grasped the gravity of the situation and nodded in agreement. The cultivators on the island exchanged bewildered glances. It seemed something serious had happened. The entire island was sealed off, allowing no one to enter or leave. This was likely the first time such a large-scale lockdown had occurred since 10,000 Immortal Island was established. Hidden among the crowd, Li Fan felt uneasy. The course of events in this world had far exceeded his expectations. Initially, he only intended to play a charlatan to fool the 10,000 Immortal Alliance's investigation. But who would have thought that Gongsun Shishuan's reputation was well-deserved? He actually deduced something based on the principle of Tianshuan locking spirit, union of Zan and Huang. He even triggered green energy similar to the Tianshuan network. What he had not expected even more was that the anomaly from tens of thousands of miles away had immediately caught Lu Shichen's attention. She crossed states in an instant and sealed off 10,000 Immortal Island. Let's take it one step at a time. If I can get through this safely, things might return to my control, Li Fan thought, narrowing his eyes and adjusting his plan. After Lu Shichen took over 10,000 Immortal Island, black-robed cultivators began arriving on the island via teleportation arrays. They carried an overwhelming aura of killing intent that lingered and patrolled various areas of the island. The cultivators were divided into groups and interrogated one by one in sequence. The first to be interrogated, naturally, were the survivors of the mutation at the martial arts hall. As the instigator of the incident, Li Fan was also the first target of the interrogation. Fortunately, he did not have to face Lu Shichen directly. However, he could faintly feel a gaze falling on him now and then, making him cautious. Feigning weakness, with a pale complexion, he pretended not to have fully recovered from his injuries. Li Fan truthfully recounted the events that had taken place in the martial arts hall. After deducing the phrase, I was immediately hit by a backlash from the heavens. As for what Elder Gongsun saw or how he triggered the terrifying green light, I have no idea. Li Fan coughed and put on an innocent expression, shifting all the blame onto Gongsun Shishuan. The 3 cultivators in charge of the interrogation asked a few more details before taking Li Fan into a small, dark room deep within the administrative hall, where he was detained. Li Fan cooperated fully throughout. Inside the isolated dark room, cut off from the outside world, he could not know what was happening on 10,000 Immortal Island. So, Li Fan closed his eyes and began meditating. Meanwhile, on Tian Island, the clone, Zhou Qingang, quietly left the island's protective formation, heading to the agreed meeting spot with the stone-faced man. Boss, something big has happened. Before the other party could say anything, Li Fan spoke first. What's the rush? Speak slowly, the stone-faced man scolded. It seems there's been a major incident on 10,000 Immortal Island. Since just now, all contact with the island's cultivators has been lost. Li Fan's anxious tone was mixed with a hint of excitement. Before I came, I made some inquiries. Just before the island was sealed off, someone saw a rainbow light descending from the central headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, arriving at 10,000 Immortal Island. This lockdown must be related to that rainbow light, Li Fan said hurriedly. The stone-faced man was taken aback by the sudden news. He remained silent for a long time, seemingly verifying the accuracy of the information. After a while, he spoke in a somewhat shocked tone, "It's true." "What is the 10,000 Immortal Alliance up to?" "Wait, that rainbow light." Lu Shichen. His voice immediately rose several notches. "Boss, who's Lu Shichen?" Li Fan feigned curiosity and asked. "She's the chief of the Strategy Formation Division of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, a truly significant figure." "But why would she come to Kongyansi?" The stone-faced man's voice was filled with both confusion and excitement. Like a hungry wolf encountering prey, he sensed that there must be some earth-shattering secret involved in this event. If they could uncover it, "Boss, could this be a great opportunity for us to make a name for ourselves?" Li Fan asked, pretending to suddenly realize something. "Indeed, we must find out the reason for her visit to Kongyansi," the stone-faced man said in a serious tone. "But 10,000 Immortal Island is now sealed off, and even communication has been blocked. It seems almost impossible to figure out what's going on inside." Li Fan frowned, appearing troubled. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he exclaimed, "Boss, I have an idea." "Oh, let's hear it. Do you remember He Zhenghao, the one who sold us the entrance exam questions for the 10,000 Immortal Alliance? Maybe he can help." He Zhenghao. The stone-faced man pondered for a moment before nodding slightly. "Go ahead and try. I'll also think of other solutions. If you find anything, contact me. If he can't help, then you'll have to lay low again," the stone-faced man instructed. "Understood." As the light on the stone face dimmed, Li Fan quickly left. After having tea with He Zhenghao on Luli Island, Li Fan swiftly returned. "Boss, there's a way." "What?" The stone-faced man was surprised at how quickly Zhou Qingang had found a solution, and even more surprised that He Zhenghao had information about the sealed 10,000 Immortal Island. "What did he say?" the stone-faced man asked in a serious tone. 1 million contribution points, flat rate. Li Fan hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice. Chapter 465. 10 million contribution points. Is he crazy? The human face exclaimed in shock. However, it quickly regained composure. HMPH, his appetite is really growing larger by the day. But is he certain that what happened on the island of 10,000 immortals is worth that much? Li Fan cautiously added after observing the other's expression, he has other conditions too. Payment first, delivery after. And he also said that whether we proceed with the trade is entirely up to us, he's not forcing us. But he guarantees that this piece of information is worth far more. He's offering this price because he's risking his life and considers us old customers. Hearing such outrageous conditions, the human face no longer appeared as agitated as before. After thinking deeply for a moment, he said, "This is a serious matter. I'll go seek instructions first. Stay here and don't move." With that, the image on the stone vanished instantly. Li Fan patiently waited. A stick of incense later, the human face reappeared. "Agree to his terms," he said decisively. "Boss." Li Fan was shocked at the other's bold decision. Earlier, He Zhenghao said that the risks of this trade are too great, and it would be inconvenient for him to show up directly, so a middleman is required. If we want to trade, we are to send the spirit stones to this island. Just tell them you are from the Federation of all worlds, and don't worry about anything else. Just hand the spirit stones over. Li Fan gave a set of coordinates, which pointed to the island where Li Chenfeng and the others from the Empire were located. Once he's sure the spirit stones have been received, he'll send us the information, Li Fan quickly added. The Federation of all worlds, what is that? Could it be? The human face seemed to have realized something and suddenly fell silent. At the latest, the spirit stones will arrive the day after tomorrow. Go keep an eye on He Zhenghao, and don't let him escape, the human face instructed. Yes, boss, Li Fan replied obediently. This is quite a gamble. If we win, we'll have achieved great merit. But if we lose, the human face muttered to himself, clearly anxious. Such a large amount and such an unreliable transaction method were things the human face had never encountered before, and it showed in his expression. Boss, don't worry. Based on my interactions with He Zhenghao over this time, I believe he is trustworthy, Li Fan reassured. Let's hope so. Go now. After ending the communication, Li Fan hurried back to Tian Island, while also using the sensor of the formless killing intent to monitor Li Chenfeng's situation. 2 days later, a cultivator in black robes appeared above the Empire's island, looking around cautiously as instructed. A woman in a blue dress suddenly appeared in front of him. The two faced off, their expressions both somewhat tense. According to the transaction procedure, the black-robed cultivator reported his identity. I am a cultivator from the Federation of all worlds. With that, he threw over a storage ring. The woman in blue caught it and inspected it, her pupils narrowing sharply. She was about to say something, but the black-robed cultivator simply waved his hand and left without a word. The blue-dressed woman stood there in disbelief, frozen in place. Master, Li Chenfeng, sensing something was wrong, quickly flew over to investigate. The blue-dressed woman handed him the storage ring, and after Li Chenfeng inspected it, he too was left in a daze. Master, what on earth? Li Chenfeng was full of confusion. It seems we weren't as prepared as we thought. The woman in blue smiled bitterly. The Five Elders Association really is efficient, never dragging their feet. Sensing how smoothly the transaction was proceeding, Li Fan couldn't help but praise inwardly. He then headed to Luli Island, had a cup of tea with He Zhenghao, and quickly set off to the rendezvous point. Activating the communication with the human face, Li Fan appeared somewhat bewildered and anxious. What about the information He Zhenghao was supposed to deliver? The human face wasted no time with pleasantries and asked directly. He quietly told me already, Li Fan said softly. Just one phrase. Li Fan placed his palms on the stone and focused his mind, transmitting the message. Tianxuan spirit locking, Xuanwang returns. Union. On the other end, silence descended completely. Moments later, faint chaotic noises could be heard, the commotion growing louder. The transaction is complete. Continue to lay low. If anything unusual happens, I'll contact you again. Despite trying to remain calm, Li Fan could still detect a hint of fear in the human face's voice. The stone disintegrated into dust, and the communication was cut off. Zhou Qingong still wore a confused expression as he returned to Tian Island. It wasn't until he reached the secluded depths of the island's protective formation that he returned to his normal self. With the interference from the Five Elders Association, even if the 10,000 Immortal Alliance tries to set up the Tianxuan Spirit Locking Formation, they may find it beyond their capabilities. How things will unfold still remains to be seen. Li Fan narrowed his eyes as his attention shifted back to his true self on 10,000 Immortal Island. After some investigation, Li Fan was released from confinement. His testimony matched that of the surviving cultivators at the time, with nothing out of the ordinary. The Immortal Alliance's primary focus remained on the whereabouts of Gongsun Shishuan. It was his deduction that triggered the strange and terrifying green light. Although Li Fan had deduced some results beforehand, the actual situation showed that Gongsun Shishuan's deduction ability was superior. Figuring out what Gongsun Shishuan had seen at the time became the most critical task. 10,000 Immortal Island remained on lockdown. However, those cultivators who had been interrogated were allowed to move freely on the island after signing confidentiality agreements. Although the events of that day couldn't be discussed in detail, Li Fan's extraordinary deducing ability, as demonstrated in the skyrocketing price of Samantabhadra True Leaf and the strange events at the Martial Hall, was widely acknowledged. As a result, many cultivators began to flock to Li Fan. Unable to access the Tianxuan mirror and seeking peace, Li Fan decided to hide at the Qinli Hall. Chinle Hall had been closed since the day it was blocked, its doors tightly shut. Li Fan used the secret passage from before to re-enter. Once inside, he found that although Zhao Shuyuan was present, he appeared dazed and expressionless. No matter how much Li Fan called out, Zhao Shuyuan didn't respond at all. It was as if the puppet had lost control due to the destruction of the Dao stone in his previous life, but this time, it seemed even worse. Li Fan observed carefully for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. It must be Lu Shichen's seal that severed the connection between the puppet and its original body. As expected from the chief of the Strategy Formation Hall, her methods are extraordinary. However, she would never imagine that the world still holds a divine technique like the profound true spirit transformation. Li Fan couldn't help but feel a little sense of pride. With nothing else to do, he strolled around the deserted Chinle Hall. Chapter 466. Zhao Shuyuan transformed himself into thousands of puppets, single-handedly supporting the vast commercial organization known as Chinle Hall, which spanned across various locations of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. In various ruins and desolate wildernesses with few people, one might catch a glimpse of his presence. He even had the power to stir up great disturbances in the Xuanwang realm. There was a certain flavor of entering the Dao through business about him. However, his luck seemed to be somewhat unfortunate. Though he claimed he never made a losing deal, from Li Fan's experience with him, it appeared Zhao Shuyuan often lost money in business. For instance, when Li Fan first met him, he had stockpiled a large number of concealment talismans, but due to the incident with 5 Elements Grand Cave Heaven, the price of the talismans plummeted. Later, he painstakingly unearthed a few minor Medicine King cauldrons, and if he had waited for the return of the true Medicine King cauldron, he would have surely made a fortune. But it was as if he was destined not to be that lucky. He sold all of those minor cauldrons early on at a low price. Perhaps he truly never made a loss, but it seems he always missed the big opportunities to get rich. Even in the previous life, when he partnered with me in the business of spirit mist grass, a moment of greed caused him to hesitate too long, and the vast wealth he had in hand vanished in an instant. Only in this life has he truly profited. I wonder if something is going to change for him. As Li Fan pondered, he carefully examined the items on Zhao Shuyuan's shelves, hoping to find something valuable, like the minor Medicine King cauldron, to make a small gain. The items on the shelves were diverse: talismans, formation diagrams, pills, and more, all available. Li Fan paid special attention to the older-looking items. Most of them were badly damaged, filled with the marks of history. Scrolls, various ornaments, and artifacts that had long lost their spiritual energy filled the shelves. Li Fan's gaze swept across them one by one. Suddenly, he stopped at an ancient painting. His expression became slightly serious as he carefully removed the scroll and slowly unrolled it. It wasn't that the painting itself was special, but rather its content that caught Li Fan's attention. The painting depicted a grand and magnificent sect entrance. The sky and earth seemed boundless, with dozens of cultivators standing in the clouds, pointing into the distance. Among the sea of clouds, the towering buildings at the mountain's peak were faintly visible. Luan birds, and Jiaolong dragons, along with other exotic beasts, wandered among the mountains. In the square at the foot of the mountain, hundreds of young disciples, still innocent in appearance, stood. They looked up at the cultivators in the sky, their faces full of excitement and admiration. It truly depicted a thriving scene of a flourishing sect. But Li Fan had seen this sect before, and it was the complete opposite of the prosperity in the painting. The ground was littered with corpses, rivers of blood flowed. The sect's entrance was in ruins, reduced to rubble. It was the very scene he saw at the bottom of the void abyss after the dense fog had cleared during his time in the Great Zon. The words, "Immortal Dao is dead," carved on the cliff had deeply shaken Li Fan at the time. Now, Li Fan knew that this was undoubtedly the aftermath of the great calamity that occurred when the disciples of the sect slaughtered each other after the arrival of the disaster of incompatibility of cultivating same technique. Which sect was this? Why did I see this place back then? It was known that the scene each person saw at the bottom of the void abyss was different. The fact that Li Fan saw this ruined sect might have been a coincidence. But Li Fan believed there might be some kind of guidance in it. After carefully storing away the painting, Li Fan continued to browse the shelves but found nothing else of value. He then approached Zhao Shuyuan. "Daoist Zhao, Daoist Zhao." Li Fan called out symbolically a few times. When Zhao still did not respond, Li Fan reached out and began to feel around him. It wasn't due to any strange habit, but rather to take this rare opportunity to study Zhao Shuyuan's thousand puppet Dao. Although profound true spirit transformation was already an astonishing divine art, it still had some small flaws. Derived from the stealing sky and changing the sun technique, it could only maintain one clone at a time, which was a bit disappointing. If he could combine it with the thousand puppet Dao and take it a step further. Thousands of avatars, indistinguishable from the real. As Li Fan's imagination ran wild, his hands moved without hesitation. Completely identical to the real body, even using divine sense to penetrate and perceive would find no difference. The control core seems to be in the head, glowing with a blue light similar to the Tao derivation stone. I've seen the remains of puppets before, dry and yellow like decaying wood. Could it be that Zhao Shuyuan's puppet avatars are made from some special type of wood? As Li Fan continued to examine the puppet in front of him, combining it with what he had learned, he felt he was beginning to grasp something. Just as he was secretly pleased with himself, he suddenly noticed that Zhao Shuyuan's eyelids were twitching slightly. His heart skipped a beat, and Li Fan instantly moved away. Moments later, he noticed that Zhao Shuyuan's previously lifeless eyes were becoming lively again. "Taoist Zhao, you're awake?" Li Fan asked, feigning concern. Taoist Li, why are you here?" Zhao Shuyuan suspiciously eyed Li Fan. Li Fan originally wanted to explain the events that had taken place after he was questioned, but he had signed a non-disclosure agreement, leaving him unable to speak. He had no choice but to tell Zhao Shuyuan that he was simply avoiding the crowd and came here to hide. "I lost contact with this puppet shortly after Lu Shichen arrived. I knew then that something big had happened, and sure enough, that non-disclosure agreement, Zhao Shuyuan glanced at Li Fan and guessed the reason for his silence. No wonder things seem unsettled over in Tianquan and Tianyuzhou Prefecture. Zhao Shuyuan squinted, about to delve into his thoughts, but his gaze swept over his shop, and his expression immediately changed. In a flash, he was at the shelves, checking things over, and exclaimed, "Why does it look like a painting is missing? That was something I painstakingly dug out from a pile of junk." Li Fan was about to tell him that the painting was with him. But before he could, the puppet in front of him suddenly exploded with a bang, shattering into pieces. Fortunately, it wasn't flesh and blood flying everywhere, but just scattered wood shavings. "Taoist Zhao." Li Fan was momentarily stunned by the sudden event. "I'm fine." In an instant, another puppet emerged from under the counter. His face full of gloom, Zhao Shuyuan grabbed a broom and began cleaning up the scene. "What just happened?" Li Fan couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. "I made a losing deal, so the puppet couldn't be sustained." Zhao Shuyuan didn't offer much explanation, merely shaking his head and sighing. "How strange. How could that painting have disappeared? Who would have the nerve to steal from me?" After cleaning up, Zhao Shuyuan stroked his chin, angrily muttering. Taoist Zhao, I forgot to mention earlier. When you lost consciousness, I noticed that the painting was quite nice, so I put it away." At this moment, Li Fan finally spoke. Chapter 467. The Qinli Hall fell into an eerie silence. Zhao Shuyuan stared at Li Fan with a look of disbelief, his face full of shock. "Don't look at me like that. I originally planned to pay, but no matter how I called out to you, you didn't respond." Li Fan shrugged. "And by the time you woke up, before I could say anything, you had already exploded on your own. Can you really blame me?" Zhao Shuyuan's face twitched as he looked at Li Fan's innocent expression. After thinking for a moment, he realized that Li Fan didn't seem like someone who would take without asking. Resigned, he pretended to be generous. "Forget it. It was just a puppet, after all. Let it blow up. I have plenty of puppets." "Taoist Zhao, how generous." Li Fan clapped and praised him. "I remember the scene in that painting depicted the heavenly sword sect from ancient times. Taoist Li, could it be that you're recalling the past from seeing it?" Zhao Shuyuan suddenly sized up Li Fan and asked with a strange look. Li Fan looked at Zhao Shuyuan, his thoughts racing. After a moment, Li Fan shook his head, his tone doubtful. "Heavenly Sword Sect, you must be mistaken. Although I've lost part of my memory after thousands of years of slumber, I still vaguely remember the 2 stone tablets inscribed with Halt, and End the War, outside the Heavenly Sword Sect's gate. The sect in this painting doesn't quite resemble that." Zhao Shuyuan slapped his forehead. "Haha, look at my memory. Maybe losing a puppet messed with my recollection. It must be the Taishang sect." Zhao Shuyuan said again. Taishang sect. Li Fan squinted slightly, as if recalling something. After a while, he shook his head slowly. No, I've visited the Taishang sect before. Their 33 floating peaks don't match the scenery in the painting either. Li Fan looked at Zhao Shuyuan with suspicion. Taoist Zhao, are you? Zhao Shuyuan chuckled awkwardly and quickly said, I remembered wrong again. Let me think, it must be the Due sect. This time, I'm absolutely sure. 1. The Due sect. Li Fan's heart stirred. Zhao Shuyuan's previous 2 tests had failed, so this mention of the Due sect might finally hold some truth. In his previous life, outside the Great Five Elements Cave Heaven, when the 5 elements merged, Li Fan had once glimpsed a mirage of a master and disciple from the Due sect. At that time, among all the cultivators on the dust-crossing boat, only he had been able to see it. Originally, Li Fan thought it was due to his unusually strong soul. But if what he saw beneath the abyss of ruin was also related to the Due sect. Li Fan remembered when he once peered into the abyss of ruin, he had almost been bewitched by its power, nearly losing his mind and foolishly attempting to explore the abyss before the truth had fully charged. At that critical moment, light suddenly burst from the bottom of the abyss of ruin, and the 4 characters, the immortal Tao is dead, appeared before his eyes, snapping him back to his senses and saving his life. It seems this Due sect has some deep connection to me. Strange. Despite pondering over his past experiences, Li Fan couldn't find the reason for this connection. The Due sect, I've heard the name, but I don't think I've ever visited. Taoist Zhao, how much do you know about this sect? Li Fan asked Zhao Shuyuan. For some reason, the scenery from the Due sect feels familiar. Could my memory be scrambled as well? Li Fan mused, showing a puzzled expression. Ignoring the teasing tone in Li Fan's voice, Zhao Shuyuan, surprised, said, Is that so? If that's the case, it's truly extraordinary. Oh, how so? Li Fan asked eagerly. Taoist, you might be the one destined for calamity that the Due sect cultivator who left this painting was waiting for. Zhao Shuyuan said solemnly, his gaze deepening as he looked at Li Fan. Destined for calamity? Li Fan repeated the phrase several times. What does that mean? The sect's name is telling. Due sect cultivators use calamities as their cultivation resource. Their technique, eternal calamity, draws power from various disasters. Each time they survive a catastrophe, their strength improves drastically. The greater the disaster, the more power they gain after surviving it. But conversely, for their next advancement, they must seek out even more dangerous calamities. However, disasters in this world are innumerable, and even heaven and earth may perish in a calamity. How can Due sect cultivators guarantee they will always survive? When they sense they may not survive their next catastrophe, they use a secret method to hide themselves from the world temporarily. They leave behind various means, waiting for someone capable of resolving the calamity to appear. That person is known as the one destined for calamity. Zhao Shuyuan slowly explained. Upon hearing this, Li Fan frowned deeply. Such a cultivation method exists. So, I've been marked by some Due sect cultivator. Zhao Taoist, is there any way to break this? Zhao Shuyuan waved his hand dismissively. Don't be so tense. Thousands of years have passed, who knows if the Due sect cultivator who left this painting is even still alive. Besides, even if he is, there's no need for concern. To survive his calamity, he will have to rely on you completely. Until he has passed through it, he won't harm you. And if you help him survive the disaster, he will owe you a great debt. The Due sect has always adhered to this rule. Otherwise, who would ever help them play such a game? Moreover, think about it. The disaster he couldn't overcome, yet you can. By then, your strength will surpass his, and he'll be too relieved to survive to even think of opposing you. Zhao Shuyuan dismissed Li Fan's worries, but began studying him with renewed interest. Li Fan Taoist, to be sensed as the one destined for calamity, by a Due sect cultivator, your future must be boundless. Zhao Shuyuan's words brought some comfort to Li Fan, but a sense of unease still lingered in his heart. Judging from the aid provided in the abyss of ruin, that Due sect cultivator was likely still alive. Though it was unlikely they were monitoring his every move, long-term observation might reveal something eventually. It seems I'll need to find a way to resolve this hidden threat, Li Fan thought to himself. Taoist, your knowledge is truly vast, even understanding these ancient sect secrets so thoroughly. I am deeply impressed. By the way, how many contribution points for this painting? I'll buy it. I can't let you make a losing deal. Though his mind was elsewhere, Li Fan's demeanor remained perfectly calm as he spoke to Zhao Shuyuan. 1. The Due sect can be translated to sect of calamity or sect of tribulation in English. This name implies a group focused on overcoming significant challenges or adversities. Should I keep the name Due or translate from now with the English term? Chapter 468. Zhao Shuyuan's face lit up with joy. Fellow Taoist, your way of handling things is to my liking. As they say, even close brothers keep clear accounts. Though you previously helped me make billions with your strategy, rules cannot be broken. After a moment of contemplation, Zhao Shuyuan said, I'll give you a significant discount, just transfer 200 contribution points to me. Li Fan chuckled lightly. Fellow Taoist Zhao, you're being too polite. Of course, Zhao Shuyuan wasn't truly concerned about the contribution points but about completing the necessary transaction process. Without any fuss, Li Fan transferred the 200 contribution points immediately. After the transaction was completed, Li Fan vaguely sensed something indescribable and inexplicable about the puppet in front of him. It was a change he had never noticed before. A thought flashed through Li Fan's mind, and he couldn't help but voice his guess. Fellow Taoist Zhao, could it be that you're about to break through? Zhao Shuyuan seemed slightly surprised, as if he hadn't expected Li Fan, who was in the golden core stage, to notice something. Good eyes, fellow Taoist. The ancient heavenly mechanism sect's reputation is truly well-deserved. After a sigh, Zhao Shuyuan nodded and said, Indeed, but the technique I cultivate is special. My breakthrough is different from the usual realms. The specifics, I'm afraid I can't say much more. I hope you understand. Zhao Shuyuan spoke with rare apology. Li Fan nodded, showing his understanding. However, I, Zhao Shuyuan, am not one to forget kindness. Thanks to you, I've profited greatly. If you ever need anything, just let me know. I'll make sure to help you out. Zhao Shuyuan said, pounding his chest with heroic spirit. Speaking of which, I do have a favor to ask. Do you know of the ancient Medicine King sect? Li Fan took the opportunity to ask for help in unearthing the small Medicine King cauldron. I have a premonition that these small cauldrons will be involved in many karmic consequences in the future, and the matter is of great importance. However, returning to the old site of the Medicine King sect could be a fatal risk for me, so I cannot go myself. I'll have to trouble you, fellow Taoist. Zhao Shuyuan readily agreed. By the way, since Head Elder Lu came to 10,000 Immortal Island, she hasn't been seen again. You have many sources of information, so could you help me investigate her whereabouts? As someone involved in the events, I'm still very curious about how this matter will impact the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Due to the confidentiality agreements, Li Fan could only speak vaguely. Zhao Shuyuan agreed without hesitation. After thanking him, they chatted for a while longer. When the cultivators who had been surrounding Li Fan outside gradually dispersed, he quietly left the Qinli Hall. Lu Shichen had already lifted the blockade of 10,000 Immortal Island, and now cultivators were free to move about. No one knew what exactly she had discovered, but it was said that even the two immortal monarchs, Xian and Hongxi, had been summoned back to the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. At the same time, sharp cultivators noticed that a series of highly unusual orders were issued. The Tianji Hall and the Formation Hall, every cultivator at or above the nascent soul stage, was being summoned to the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Such a large-scale mobilization, are they preparing to research and construct the Tianquan spirit-locking formation ahead of schedule? Hopefully, the Five Elders Association will step up their efforts. I don't want to see that eerie green sky again in this lifetime. This was Li Fan's thought as he awaited Zhao Shuyuan's return with information. He quietly left 10,000 Immortal Island, disguised as an emissary from the Federation of All World, heading straight to the island where the Empire and its group were located. He hadn't forgotten that the Five Elders Association still owed him 10 million contribution points. Though these points were in the form of standardized spirit stones, which could be exchanged for contribution points via the Tianquan mirror, the amount was enormous and its origins unclear. If Li Fan exchanged them alone, it might attract unwanted attention from certain cultivators, especially after having already exchanged 5 million points. Since he needed to acquire technology for controlling exotic beasts from the Empire anyway, he figured he might as well hand this hot potato over to them. Rushing ahead, he soon arrived over the island. Sensing Li Fan's arrival, Qing instantly flashed over to greet him. Compared to her previous cold attitude, she was now much more courteous. It seems that no matter the era, the power of wealth is always astounding. So, fellow Taoist, were you satisfied with the gift from the Federation of All World? Li Fan asked with a smile. Hey, satisfied, more like shocked, Qing said with a hint of laughter, leading Li Fan to a private chamber. A contribution of 10 million points, that's quite a sum, fellow Taoist. But why send someone suddenly? Wasn't the deal meant to happen at our next meeting? If the emissary hadn't identified themselves, I might have attacked. There was a slight smile in Qing's voice, along with a hint of confusion. Li Fan shook his head. There's been a complication. In the coming days, the 10,000 Immortal Alliance will likely increase its domestic surveillance, so we need to complete our transaction quickly. I've been delaying my visit because I've been searching for a safe place for you to settle. Here, Li Fan intentionally left a gap, pausing briefly. I believe we've shown enough sincerity. Now, it's up to your empire to decide. Li Fan took a sip of the tea that Qing had prepared for him and spoke slowly. This tea is quite good. The sky blue tea went down, and Li Fan was somewhat surprised. Unlike the spiritual teas he usually drank, this one didn't benefit his cultivation, spiritual power, or divine sense. Instead, he felt a warm current flow through his body, improving and strengthening his physique. As someone who cultivated the creation furnace technique, Li Fan was naturally very familiar with such sensations. It was strikingly similar to the hidden power of the human body. This is Supreme Dragon Whisker Tea. If fellow Taoist likes it, I'll send you some, Qing said with a smile. After handing a storage ring to Li Fan, Qing straightened her expression. That was personal business, now let's discuss the trade between the Empire and the Federation of All World. We believe the Federation truly intends to aid the Empire, so we will reciprocate by intensifying our cooperation. First, here is the first part of the transaction. As she spoke, Qing handed over a uniquely designed storage ring. The ring was engraved with a lifelike Qingluan bird, its eyes even moving. Li Fan looked at the Qingluan bird on the ring and found it somewhat familiar. But with so many similar bird species in the world, he couldn't be sure. He simply accepted it and began to inspect its contents. Unexpectedly, his divine sense was blocked, and he failed to examine it. Only when the Qingluan bird lazily glanced at Li Fan and flapped its wings did he manage to see inside. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone Translation Chapter 469. In a storage space 10 zhang long, 4 zhang wide, and 3 zhang high, rows of redwood shelves were neatly arranged. On the shelves, items resembling books were categorized and piled up. Li Fan, with a thought, took one of them. After observing it in his hand for a moment, Li Fan realized that these so-called books were alive. Although they remained still, Li Fan keenly sensed the unique aura of a living being from them. Li Fan instantly understood that while they were inside the storage ring, they were in a dormant state similar to death. But once they left the storage ring and came into contact with the outside world, they regained their vitality. Opening the book, rays of light shot out from the pages and gathered in the air. In the light, there were dense characters and illustrations. It was written in the common script of the Xuanwang realm. Li Fan carefully examined it and discovered that it contained information about the exotic beast, dark ancient mantis. From its body structure, living habits, the value of each part of its body, to the methods of breeding and reproduction, everything was detailed. It was an all-encompassing encyclopedia. Li Fan turned another page, and the light shifted and reformed. This time, it was information about the exotic beast ink spirit fish. Li Fan switched to another book and found that it also recorded information about different exotic beasts. In our world, there is a type of exotic beast called bookworms. They feed on words and images. Through special means, they can be made into books, which allow them to reproduce the texts and images they have consumed, achieving large-scale data storage, Qing explained to Li Fan. This storage ring contains the Empire's millennia of research on exotic beasts. It includes all the information about the exotic beasts in our world, except for a few rare species, whose data will be supplemented during the final transaction. Li Fan nodded slowly and carefully examined a few more books before solemnly putting the storage ring away. Having data alone isn't enough, it must be matched with physical entities. This is the second part of the Empire's transaction. Qing took out a red square wooden box and handed it to Li Fan. Slightly sensing it with his spiritual sense, Li Fan understood the function of the wooden box. It appeared no bigger than the size of a palm, but inside it was divided into countless separate spaces. In each space, there were 10 exotic beasts of the same kind. They seemed to be frozen, all motionless. Li Fan could tell that these exotic beasts still retained their life signs. Aside from the adult beasts, Li Fan also found many sleeping juveniles in the spaces. There were embryos, eggs, or tiny young creatures. This is the sealed life treasure box, containing the exotic beasts corresponding to the data in the first storage ring. A trace of pride flashed across Qing's face. With these 2 storage rings, as long as you find the right environment, large-scale cultivation of exotic beasts can be achieved again. With enough resources invested, it wouldn't be difficult to recreate the Empire's current grand scene. Li Fan stored the sealed life treasure box away, saying with satisfaction, with the contents of these 2 storage rings, I can report back to the organization. However, Li Fan's tone shifted. Although these items are indeed valuable, they don't contribute much to actual combat strength. Our Federation of All Worlds still hopes you can provide some technical support that would be useful in the ongoing battle against the Xuanwang realm. For example, the beast-like armor that this young brother demonstrated earlier. Li Fan pointed at Li Chenfeng, his eyes intense as he looked at Qing. Qing smiled and said, I figured that's what you were after with such a generous exchange. This just so happens to be the third part of our transaction, and the final portion for now. Qing extended her right hand, and a blood-red, pulsating round bead instantly floated above her palm. This is the beast soul bead. Even an ordinary mortal, as long as they can withstand the beast soul sealed within, can absorb it and summon the beast god armor, unleashing combat power equivalent to that of the exotic beast. Qing handed over another storage ring. This one, however, bore no special patterns, it was just an ordinary ring. This ring contains 1,000 beast soul beads. 500 of them contain exotic beasts with strength equivalent to the Foundation Establishment stage cultivators. Another 490 beads house beasts with golden core level strength. As for the remaining 9, they seal the souls of scarlet mystic whales, beasts comparable to nascent soul cultivators. And the last one, Qing hesitated for a moment before continuing, it was made from the essence of the 9-headed divine bird. In theory, it can unleash power equivalent to a soul transformation stage cultivator. But the 9-headed bird is inherently ferocious. Even after thousands of years of death, its violent aura remains. Although the Empire succeeded in using it to craft a few beast soul beads, no one has survived the refining process so far. Those who tried either went mad or died. If the Federation wants to attempt it, I suggest choosing someone with extraordinary willpower. Oh, and one more thing. The power of the exotic beasts clashes with a cultivator's spiritual energy. The stronger the cultivator, the more resistance they face when refining the beast soul beads. To maximize its potential, it's best used on ordinary mortals. Qing added. Excellent. A hint of joy appeared on Li Fan's face. Our Federation of All Worlds appreciates your sincerity. I'm sure once I report back, deeper cooperation will soon follow. Haha, the organization is eager to learn the method of crafting beast soul beads and the art of controlling beasts. Li Fan said. Qing's expression remained unchanged as she replied solemnly, once the final transaction is complete, and the Empire has fully withdrawn from the Xuanwang realm, all of that will be handed over to your Federation. I can't wait for that day. Li Fan put away the storage ring containing the 1,000 beast soul beads. He left the secret chamber and flew into the sky. When I've found a suitable base for you, I'll return for another transaction. I hope that aside from technology, the Empire can also provide some manpower support. At that time, we will handle the personnel's reception and transfer. Li Fan transmitted his voice as he looked down at the people of the Empire. No problem, Qing readily agreed. Li Fan nodded and immediately soared into the sky. Instead of returning to the 10,000 Immortal Island, he headed straight to Shenhua Island. Junior brother, please stand guard for me. The cultivating Tianyang, who was struggling to practice the sky-shrouding palm secret technique, immediately stopped when he heard Li Fan's words. He stood up and began scanning the surroundings with vigilance. Chapter 470, The Sealed Life Treasure Box. It seems that the Empire indeed inherited the legacy of the beast-taming sect back in the day. Now that Tianyang had reached soul transformation stage strength, Li Fan felt reassured enough to review the rewards from this trade with the Empire. Detailed information on various exotic beasts, along with the frozen beast entities in the sealed life treasure box, might not be of much use to other cultivators. However, for Li Fan, who practiced the creation furnace technique, this was an undeniable treasure trove. Li Fan could harness and transform the unique abilities of these exotic beasts, one by one, using his technique. The beauty of living creatures, nothing surpasses this. The records in the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Codex probably don't capture the full essence of the living beings of this world either. With a light flick of his finger, Li Fan summoned all the bookworms from his storage ring. His spiritual consciousness flipped through the books, and in an instant, countless rays of light and shadows projected into the air of his cave dwelling. The Tao derivation stone in his mind emitted a deep blue glow it had never shown before. Li Fan narrowed his eyes, focusing on engraving the words and images into his memory. A flood of information rushed in, organizing itself and being stored in the Tao derivation stone. Amid the continuous sound of flipping pages, the light and shadows constantly shifted. After recording everything in a few pages, Li Fan felt a slight headache in his temples. Taking a short rest and consuming a Tao enlightenment pill, he resumed his reading. Over the course of several thousand years, the Empire had birthed many unique species. Most of them were creatures that Li Fan had never encountered in the Heavenly Doctor's Codex, nor did they exist in the present Xuanwang realm. Their various strange abilities amazed even the well-traveled Li Fan. For example, the wisdom worm that resided in the human brain and could enhance cognitive abilities, the mimic beast, which could perfectly disguise itself after devouring other beings, and the thousand-spirit bird, which fed on human emotions. Each of these creatures opened Li Fan's eyes to new wonders. The all-encompassing furnace, this is the true myriad phenomena of living beings. Amid Li Fan's amazement, the pages of the books continued to flip. In a short time, he absorbed the knowledge accumulated over thousands of years by the Empire into his mind. 10 days later, Li Fan let out a long breath, massaged his aching forehead, and returned the bookworms to his storage ring. Sensing the concerned gaze of Tianyang, Li Fan waved his hand, signaling that he was fine. After resting for half a day and recovering some of his energy, Li Fan took out the red wooden box. According to the information he'd previously seen in the Tianshuan mirror, this sealed life treasure box was an exclusive artifact of the beast-taming sect from ancient times. It was said to be crafted from 10,000 transformation spirit wood, capable of sealing and preserving living demonic beasts. With the passage of time over thousands of years, the 10,000 transformation spirit tree had nearly gone extinct, making the sealed life treasure box an exceedingly rare item. It seems my intuition was correct. The familiar feeling I sensed from that woman in green must have come from the azure Luan bird that Shu Ke once encountered in the fallen immortal realm. I wonder if that red-crowned crane is still alive. Could it be that the founder of the Empire, the first to comprehend the beast-taming technique, was Shu Ke? According to Li Chenfeng's memories, he has long since passed away. But things may not be as simple as they seem. Li Fan pondered silently. Based on the information currently known, it appears that Shu Ke was the only member of the beast-taming sect to enter that small world, thus establishing the Empire's legacy. But where did the other members of the beast-taming sect go? What about Lu Ya? And why did Emperor Sangmo come to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance and become the curator of the Museum of Divine Treasure? How does all this relate to Mr. Bai's mission from back then? There were too many questions that remained unanswered for now. Perhaps the next trip to the fallen immortal realm will resolve some of these doubts. Soon, Li Fan calculated the time in his heart. After putting away the sealing life treasure box, Li Fan took out a beast soul bead at the Foundation establishment level. One could say that the Empire's generosity this time far exceeded Li Fan's expectations. 500 Foundation establishment level, 490 golden core level, and 9 nascent soul level beast god armor warriors, if used wisely, they could certainly cause quite a stir. Although these were only theoretical combatants, in the current Xuanwang realm, the actual combat strength of cultivators was shockingly low. Aside from a few rare cultivators who specialized in combat techniques, most people would already be considered exceptional if they could use a few offensive and defensive techniques. The beast god armor, with its ability to influence spiritual consciousness, resist most spell attacks, and move with incredible speed, was definitely a deadly weapon to ordinary cultivators. The question now is how to use them for maximum benefit. I need to think this through carefully. Li Fan temporarily set aside this thought, holding a beast soul bead in his hand and pressing it against his forehead. Suddenly, his vision turned blood red. In a daze, Li Fan seemed to see a fierce one-eyed hunting leopard lunging toward him. HMPH. Li Fan's mind sharpened like a needle, stabbing toward the leopard. The leopard let out a mournful cry, and the illusion quickly vanished. The beast's soul bead dissolved into a red liquid, which seemed to have a life of its own, flowing from his forehead toward his limbs and bones. Li Fan sensed a strange energy trying to infiltrate his body, attempting to modify it. Unlike the pure enhancement from his creation furnace technique, the beast god armor felt more like grafting the power of an exotic beast onto a human. Although it temporarily strengthened his abilities, his physical body became tainted by the beast's power and lost its purity. Crooked paths, not of the true way. Li Fan shook his head as the hidden power within his body surged like a flood, instantly expelling the invading beast energy. The hunting leopard's wail echoed in his ears again, and the red liquid from the beast's soul bead evaporated in an instant. It seems this armor is only suitable for mortals who cannot cultivate. Or perhaps, Li Fan's eyes gleamed with a peculiar light. He thought of Yi Feipeng from his previous life, who had awakened the Kunpeng bloodline. If one already possesses a beast bloodline, they would naturally not fear this kind of contamination. In this life, He Zhenghao has been profiting handsomely by following me. He probably no longer cares about that smuggling business. As for Su Xiaomei and the others, they are still in the outer realm. Without me, they likely wouldn't have had a chance to come here. Li Fan smiled faintly. This life's grand show wouldn't be complete without these little ones. With that, Li Fan rose, bid farewell to Tianyang, concealed his aura, and quietly made his way to the outer realm. First, he arrived at the central volcano of the outer realm and observed it for a while. Strange. Li Fan shook his head. Ever since he first came to the outer realm, he had felt something unusual about this volcano. However, each time he carefully investigated, he found nothing out of the ordinary. As his cultivation grew deeper, his sense of foreboding became stronger. But he still couldn't pinpoint the cause. Perhaps after I reach the nascent soul stage, I'll discover something. Li Fan made a mental note of the matter and then headed straight for Dali capital city. Chapter 471. Early morning, Yi Mansion. The chubby Yi Feipeng was sound asleep, seemingly dreaming of something particularly pleasant, as his lips curled slightly. He was completely unaware of the black shadow that suddenly appeared beside him. The shadow waved a hand gently, causing Yi Feipeng's head to tilt as he instantly fell unconscious. The figure's right hand formed a claw and hovered above Yi Feipeng's head. After a brief moment, the hand slowly withdrew. A drop of thick, blackish-red blood appeared in the figure's palm. Yi Feipeng, who had looked healthy moments before, suddenly seemed as though he had contracted a severe illness, his face drained of energy. The drop of blood in the shadow's palm seemed alive, possessing its own consciousness as it continuously squirmed, attempting to escape the figure's grasp. As the shadow tightened its fingers, the space in which the blood could struggle grew smaller and smaller until, eventually, the blood was entirely absorbed into the figure's body. The shadow stood still in the night for a long while. Peef! Two menacing bone wings suddenly tore through the figure's back, stretching out behind him. Threads of flesh clung to the wings, emitting a faint sizzling sound as the flesh grew along the bone spurs, swiftly covering the bare bones. The bone wings became fuller. However, under the moonlight, one could still clearly see the constantly writhing flesh on the edges of the wings, giving off a sinister and eerie aura. The Kunpeng bloodline. A low voice escaped from the shadow's mouth. Moments later, the figure ripped the wings off from his back. Surprisingly, there was no blood spurting from the wounds. The struggling flesh at the injury site was swiftly expelled by a surge of pure, vast vitality. In an instant, the shadow was fully restored to its original state. Ancient demon beasts truly possess some mysteries. The figure murmured as he looked at the still twitching wings he had torn off. This shadow was none other than Li Fan. Upon arriving in the capital of the Dali kingdom, the first thing he did was extract a portion of the Kunpeng blood from Yi Feipeng's body. While he stored the majority of the blood in a storage ring, he absorbed a small part into his own body. The power of this bloodline was far more domineering than the beastly forces Li Fan had encountered in the beast soul bead. If those beast forces were infectious and grafted, then the power of the Kunpeng bloodline was all about devouring and complete assimilation. No wonder in my previous life, Yi Feipeng's behavior and even his thoughts gradually became more like those of a true demonic beast. This is the inevitable consequence of using the power of the Kunpeng bloodline. But, Li Fan smiled slightly, by mimicking it with my furnace of creation technique, I don't have such worries. Kun devour, Pung soar, Pung transformation. As Li Fan muttered quietly to himself, his figure in the night twisted and changed. Sometimes he transformed into a whale, other times into a Pung, and occasionally into a human with Pung wings. After a long time, Li Fan returned to his original form. The Kunpeng blood I used for comprehension is too little. Right now, I can only mimic its form and cannot fully replicate the Kunpeng's divine powers. But no worries, I have a ready-made blood bank right here. Li Fan looked at Yi Feipeng, a peaceful smile spreading across his face. He grabbed the chubby youth and shot into the sky, disappearing into the night. The next day, chaos erupted in the capital. Children from prominent families, such as the Su, Yi, and Han families, mysteriously went missing. Even after these influential families searched the entire city, they couldn't find any trace of the children. Panic spread, and rumors began circulating. The affected families gathered in secret to discuss the situation. They concluded that only two entities could be responsible, either the rumored Immortals or the Dali Emperor himself. It was clear that Immortals wouldn't stoop to such stealthy actions. That left only one possibility: the Emperor had acted. The aristocrats and ministers couldn't help but recall various rumors they'd heard before, and resentment began to grow in their hearts. Thus, undercurrents began to stir within the capital. Meanwhile, the instigator of all this, Li Fan, had already left the realm. After returning to the Xuanwang realm, he didn't stop for a moment. Instead of heading to any particular region of the Xuanwang realm, he passed through the Immortal Extinction Passage and returned to his homeland, the Great Zan. The Tian boat sailed swiftly through the air, carrying 16 frightened children huddled together in the cabin, trembling in fear. Li Fan stood at the prow, gazing below. Like the outer realm, the Great Zan was a complete miniature world, but it was over 10 times larger. Since the outer realm could produce cultivation geniuses like Su Xiaomei and Xiao Heng, there was no reason the Great Zan couldn't as well. His first destination was Hengguang City, the wealthiest city in Great Zan. As his immense divine sense swept over the mortals below, Li Fan searched for suitable candidates. Soon after, Li Fan frowned deeply. How is it that so few have better potential than I did? Shaking his head, the Tian boat sped up and headed for the next city. But the result was the same. After spending nearly half a month, Li Fan had almost searched through all the citizens of Great Zan, yet those suitable for cultivation were exceedingly rare. It seems that my difficulty in stepping onto the path of immortality wasn't entirely coincidental. People in heaven, soaring into the sky, Li Fan closed his eyes and sensed the very essence of the Zan realm. Humans are the spirits of all living beings, blessed by the heavens. Those favored by the heavens can sense the Tao, cultivating in harmony with the way, and step onto the path of immortality. This is what should naturally occur. Given the vast population of Great Zan, there should theoretically be many so-called geniuses favored by the heavens. But strangely enough, Li Fan recalled the Void Ripper whales that lingered outside Great Zan, trying to sever the entire Zan realm from the Xuanwang world. When the heavens offer no favor, who dares to tread the path of immortality? But why is the Li outer realm so unique? With doubts swirling in his mind, Li Fan sighed softly and temporarily gave up on his original plans. He only made a detour to the area near Geely Mountain, taking the two boys he had noticed with extraordinary potential. He then left Great Zan and returned to the world of cultivation. I knew it. Immortals do exist, Sun Erlang exclaimed excitedly, pacing back and forth. Beside him, the burly Wang Xuanba looked worried and uneasy. Erlang, what do you think the Immortal wants with us? When do you think we'll be able to go back? I miss home. Wang Xuanba whispered to Sun Erlang. Have some ambition. How can you return home without mastering the ability to fly through the clouds and split mountains? Sun Erlang scolded. Wang Xuanba opened his mouth to say something, but suddenly noticed a figure appear beside them. Immortal Master. Wang Xuanba was startled and hurriedly knelt down to kowtow. Immortal Master, please teach me how to cultivate. Sun Erlang also knelt and bowed. Li Fan's gaze swept over the two but he didn't reply. Instead, he led them to the cabin where Su Chengyu and the other 16 children were. The children, many of whom hadn't seen their families, were lost in fear and confusion, crying uncontrollably. Keep them quiet. This will be your first test, Li Fan said to Sun Erlang. Remember, you can't hit them. Li Fan disappeared immediately after. Sun Erlang, who prided himself on his martial prowess, stared at the group of snot-nosed brats before him, stumped. Chapter 472. Sun Family's second young master scratched his head in frustration, but after much effort, he finally managed to calm the restless children from the separated realm. Li Fan then led them to the path of transformation into Tao. The cave dwelling he had previously opened wasn't large, but it was more than enough to accommodate these children. Li Fan made a trip back to the 10,000 Immortals Island and purchased the Spring of Spiritual Life and Scarlet Fruit Tree from the Tianshuan Mirror, solving their food problem. Only then did he gather the children. They looked at Li Fan with innocent and bewildered eyes. "Do you know what immortality is?" Li Fan asked. Most of the children instinctively shook their heads, including Yi Feipeng, who was completely puzzled. Only Sun Erlang, who was slightly older, had a flash of desire and longing in his eyes. He eagerly responded, "I know. Immortals can fly through the sky and burrow through the earth, move mountains and fill seas, summon wind and rain, and do anything." Sun Erlang's words seemed to embolden the previously timid children. Another child quietly said, "I know too. My father taught me a song, to be like an immortal, riding a crane to the heavens, turning stone into gold, miraculous and beyond words." Li Fan chuckled when he heard this. He recognized this child as the future father of Han Wuyu. This time, Li Fan had also captured him along with Han Wuyu's mother, wanting to see whether Han Wuyu would still be born under such drastic changes. The significance of the possible differences was crucial to Li Fan. With a wave of his hand, the children, who were chattering away, immediately quieted down. Li Fan solemnly taught, "The so-called immortals are merely people who are a bit more powerful. But for a mere mortal to become as powerful as an immortal, how easy could that be? Some people are skilled in literature, others in martial arts. The most important thing is to find a method that suits you to become stronger." Li Fan deliberately paused, waiting for the children to reflect. After they seemed to be deep in thought, he continued, "I have 3 methods that can make you as strong as immortals. First, the rebelling against heaven method. Mortals follow the natural order, while immortals go against it. By defying the laws of heaven and earth, you can attain the path to eternal life. This is the highest method." The children, though not understanding much, grasped the basic idea, and their eyes widened in amazement. Second, the hidden furnace method. The human body contains a hidden furnace, and by refining it, you can tap into your potential. At advanced stages, sheer physical strength alone can move mountains and fill seas. This is the mid-level method. Upon hearing this, only Sun Erlang and Wang Xuanba had a spark of interest in their eyes. "If neither of the first 2 methods works, I still have a third. Although it cannot compare to the other 2, it is still one of the many paths to greatness. It is the beast taming method. The world was once filled with various exotic beasts that possessed incredible powers. By harnessing their strength, you too can accomplish the feats of immortals with a mortal body." Li Fan spoke loudly. The children grew excited with anticipation. "Everyone is different. Only a few will be able to master the highest method. I will teach you according to your strengths. You may choose how to cultivate voluntarily. Think carefully. 3 days later, I will return to this place." With a sweep of his hand, Li Fan activated a memory stone, which played a continuous loop explaining the 3 methods in the air. The children were captivated by the various dazzling scenes displayed and immersed themselves in them. 3 days passed quickly. When Li Fan reappeared, they immediately fell silent from their discussions. "Those who wish to cultivate the highest method, step forward," Li Fan commanded. Su Changyu, Sun Erlang, and 3 other children boldly stepped forward. After scanning them, Li Fan solemnly said, "None of you have exceptional talent. If your cultivation becomes difficult in the future, don't regret your choice." Su Changyu and the others showed no signs of hesitation. Li Fan flicked his fingers, and several streams of light flew into their minds. "Thus, I have passed on different methods to you. Remember, immortal cultivation is rare, and you must not practice multiple methods simultaneously. In the future, if you encounter difficulties, you must figure them out on your own and never reveal your cultivation method to others." Upon hearing this, the children's expressions changed slightly. But Li Fan ignored them, summoning a gentle breeze to lead them to another room. He then turned to the remaining children and said, "Those who wish to cultivate the hidden furnace method, step forward." Wang Xuanba was the first to move. Most of the other children, after some hesitation, also stepped forward. Without saying much, Li Fan transmitted the creation furnace technique into their minds. After sending them away, Li Fan looked at the remaining 3 children, his eyelid twitching. Among them were the nonchalant Xiao Heng and the cunning-eyed Yi Feipeng. Why did you choose the lowest level beast taming method? Li Fan asked coldly, pointing at Xiao Heng. You answer first. Startled, Xiao Heng scratched his head, embarrassed. Master Immortal, I feel like I'm too dumb to learn the first two methods. So I'll just honestly learn the beast taming method. Li Fan sneered. Are you sure? No regrets. Seeing that Li Fan wasn't reprimanding him, Xiao Heng breathed a sigh of relief and nodded quickly, no regrets. Li Fan didn't say anything more and handed him a nascent soul beast soul bead. This is a beast god bead, containing the soul of a powerful beast. It's too strong for you now, so keep it by your side, day and night. When you feel ready, try to refine it. Li Fan instructed. Thank you, Master Immortal. Xiao Heng happily accepted the beast soul bead. Master Immortal, I think the same way as Xiao Heng. The other child, Zhao Wen, who seemed simple and honest, also spoke up quickly. Li Fan examined Zhao Wen's body carefully, and after some thought, gave him another nascent soul beast soul bead. Don't push yourself, Li Fan advised. Zhao Wen gratefully knelt and bowed. And you? Li Fan looked at the last one, Yi Fei Peng. Yi Fei Peng scratched his cheek, hesitating. Finally, he gathered his courage and asked tentatively. Master Immortal, why can we only choose one method? I want all three. Is that possible? Li Fan paused, gazing at the eager Yi Fei Peng. Suddenly, he burst into laughter. Since you've asked, I shall grant your wish. The sea-stabilizing divine sword, the creation furnace technique, and a beast soul bead made from the essence of the nine-headed divine bird flew toward Yi Fei Peng. Thank you, Master Immortal. Thank you. Yi Fei Peng was overjoyed, bowing repeatedly. Xiao Heng and Zhao Wen, stunned by the unexpected outcome, were left speechless. Chapter 473. Xiao Heng opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, his lips only moved slightly, and when he looked at the stern face of Li Fan, he ultimately remained silent. On the other hand, Zhao Wen, who had a simple and honest nature, didn't think much. After his initial shock, his eyes were filled with pure admiration. Thus, the cultivation path for this group of children was temporarily set, except for Su Xiaomei, who was still in swaddling clothes. Although Su Xiaomei had extraordinary talent, she was simply too young. Being at the stage of babbling, it was unrealistic to expect her to start cultivating yet. However, with the protection of numerous spiritual items purchased by Li Fan, along with the care of Xiao Heng and Su Chengyu, there was no need to worry about her health. In fact, she was growing even faster than in her previous lives. 7 days later, as the children's cultivation journeys were beginning to take shape, Li Fan gathered them together once again. Do you know where you are right now? Li Fan asked. After becoming more familiar over the past few days, the children were no longer as reserved as they had been. It's the Immortal Realm, they answered eagerly. Correct, Li Fan nodded. But do you know that your ancestors originally came from this Immortal Realm? Immortal Master, our ancestors were also immortals. The children asked, wide-eyed and chattering in excitement. Li Fan then told them the story of how, in ancient times, their ancestors had been forced to leave their homeland due to being afflicted by a curse that separated mortals from immortals. They were merely stronger humans who relied on their power to act recklessly, treating their former comrades cruelly. Why should they monopolize this vast and beautiful world full of spiritual energy, while you are left to live in a small, desolate world with no spiritual energy and even the risk of total annihilation? It's because you are not strong enough. Li Fan's gaze swept over them as he subtly used the power of his 7 apertures exquisite heart to manipulate their thoughts. When you become strong enough, this world will respect and accept your opinions. All the humans of the small worlds should unite. Everything that was lost must be taken back by your own hands. With these words, full of passionate rhetoric, the children became filled with a shared sense of hatred, eager to strike back at the Immortal Realm as soon as possible. Of course, we must also recognize the gap between us and the Immortal Realm. Not only is our overall strength too weak, but the number of cultivators we have is far too small. So, we must endure and lay low. We must seek out fresh blood to strengthen our organization. Unconsciously, the dialogue between Li Fan and the children had shifted from you to us. It's been some time since you left home, and I know some of you miss your parents, Li Fan said. But don't worry, I'm not an unreasonable person, he added, pointing to Tian Yang, who was standing quietly to the side. As long as you succeed in your cultivation and can defeat him, I will allow you to return home. And I will even grant you the authority to recruit people from your homeland to join our Federation of All Worlds. Upon hearing this, the children became excited. Who wouldn't want to return home with newfound power, boasting their immortal techniques? Moreover, the strange man, Tianyong, seemed a bit dim-witted and didn't appear to be that difficult to deal with. With newfound hope and a spark of ambition, the children began cultivating even more diligently. In secret, Li Fan watched these future pillars of the Federation of All Worlds and nodded in approval. Of course, he didn't truly expect to launch a counterattack against the Immortal Realm or overthrow the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. However, his recent profitable dealings with the Empire had given him some new ideas. Using the banner of the Federation of All Worlds, he could continue to make contact with small worlds that possessed unique power systems and profit greatly from these exchanges. The value of power at the same level was not equivalent between small worlds and the Xuanwang realm. Take, for example, the 1,000 Beast Soul Beads. 500 Foundation Establishment, 490 Golden Core, and even 9 Nascent Souls. Assembling a team of this strength in the Xuanwang realm would cost more than 10 million in contribution points. But due to the Empire's urgent need for contribution points to detach from the Xuanwang realm, Li Fan was able to easily secure significant gains. The same applied to other small worlds. However, since these pocket dimensions and small worlds were all hidden away, to connect with them required a large number of personnel. Therefore, raising these children was quite necessary. Besides, with the mountain-sitting technique in their possession, the stronger they became, the greater the benefits for Li Fan. He quietly instructed Tianyong not to hit them too hard, and as long as they reached the combat strength of Golden Core cultivators, he should let them win. After leaving behind a formless killing intent to monitor them, Li Fan quietly returned to 10,000 Immortals Island. While he had been away, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance appeared peaceful on the surface, but hidden currents were already surging underneath. After deploying a large number of cultivators, they issued a call for recruitment. Any cultivators with achievements in the field of formations were summoned. They didn't need to pass the usual entrance exams and could immediately receive the benefits of a formation master in the strategy formation hall. Those who performed exceptionally well could even be rewarded with Dao integration techniques. In no time, talented formation masters from all over the world gathered at the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters. Such a grand assembly naturally didn't go unnoticed by the Five Elders Association. On the border, the Five Elders Association continued to provoke and probe the alliance. From time to time, news of exposed and executed spies from the Five Elders Association would surface. Both sides remained cautious about war. However, beneath the strange calm, a massive storm seemed to be brewing. Li Fan sensed something unusual. If they only wanted to construct the Tianquan spirit-locking formation, there was no need for so many formation masters. The deduction of the formation diagram wasn't something nascent soul-level formation masters could even participate in. Chief Lu, what are you up to? Li Fan muttered to himself, his eyes flashing as he quickly reviewed recent events in the Tianquan mirror, trying to find some clues. After a long time, his eyes suddenly stopped on a seemingly ordinary piece of news. Foundation Establishment cultivator Guo Yezhong died unexpectedly while attempting to break through to the Golden Core stage. Guo Yezhong, how did he die so early? Li Fan remembered this person clearly from his previous life. Guo Yezhong had relied on contribution points to win first place in the spirit-locking formation competition, so Li Fan had a strong impression of him. Now, his sudden and unexplained death seemed suspicious. Li Fan decided to investigate the events leading up to Guo Yezhong's death to see if he could uncover anything unusual. After several days of effort and spending contribution points like water, Li Fan finally found a potential lead from one of Guo Yezhong's friends. Chapter 474. Guo Yezhong was a person deeply obsessed with the Tao of formations. His mind was often imaginative, with sudden flashes of inspiration. He also loved drinking, and after becoming thoroughly intoxicated, he would share his wild and unrealistic ideas with his friends. His friends would just laugh it off as drunken talk. Not long ago, Guo Yezhong once again drank himself into a stupor. He told his friends about a vision he had in a dream, the sky of Tianquan hanging above like a spider's web, covering the world and binding all beings. Because it was so bizarre, his friends again didn't take it seriously and dismissed it as a joke. After Guo Yezhong sobered up, they even mocked him for it. Who knew that as soon as Guo Yezhong heard this, his expression changed dramatically. He warned his friends not to speak of it, then left in a huff. For the next several days, he locked his doors and refused all visitors. Then, suddenly, he claimed to have gained some insight and left to seek an opportunity to break through to the golden core stage. He never returned. A few days later, a strange heavenly phenomenon occurred, leading others to discover his body. Bad wine brings misfortune. Li Fan sighed softly, then fell into deep thought. Was this the work of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance to prevent leaks by silencing him? For the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, which was in urgent need of talent in the Tao of formations, there was no need for such drastic measures. A simple recruitment order would have been enough to make him devote his life to the construction of the Tianshuan spirit-locking formation. There was no need to go to such extremes. Then the remaining possibility is that the Five Elders Association took action. After I revealed the secret of the Tianshuan spirit locking, Xuanwang unification, to the Five Elders Association, they must have been trying everything to gather information related to it. But due to the strict secrecy measures of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, they had little success. Until they discovered that an unremarkable foundation establishment cultivator, Guo Yezhong, had openly described a vision related to the Tianshuan spirit locking formation while drunk. That's when disaster struck Guo Yezhong. Li Fan stroked his chin, piecing together what might have happened. Guo Yezhong, despite his immense talent in formations, probably didn't know much about the Tianshuan spirit locking formation. At most, he had some vague concept. And the Five Elders Association's knowledge of formations is not inferior to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. With Guo Yezhong as a lead, what happens next is anyone's guess. The 10,000 Immortal Alliance is going even bigger this time compared to the last life, just for the sake of the Tianshuan spirit-locking formation. It's almost certain that with both sides vying for control, either the Tianshuan spirit-locking formation will never come into being, or it will evolve into something far more terrifying than in the last life. I can only hope the Five Elders Association holds their ground. If necessary, I can lend them a hand. Li Fan pondered over the structure of the spirit-locking formation for a while before setting aside his thoughts. As for this matter, which could alter the future course of history in the Xuanyuan realm, the vast majority of the cultivators in the 10,000 Immortal Alliance were completely unaware. For them, life was as peaceful as ever, with no difference from usual. They did missions, accumulated contribution points, exchanged them for cultivation techniques and resources, and then secluded themselves for cultivation. Occasionally, they would take a break to relax and play. This was their daily life. The topics of casual conversation among the cultivators were nothing more than the latest genius to break through, or who had incredible luck and found a technique in some sect ruins. But this year, one name had become a frequent subject of discussion. Li Fan, a cultivator from the Heavenly Mechanism sect. He had accurately predicted the sharp rise in the price of Samantabhadra true leaves. Though most of the participants in this event suffered heavy losses and hated Li Fan for it, they did not doubt his ability to predict. In fact, at some point, a group of fanatical cultivators started praising Li Fan's predictive abilities. They swore by his name, claiming that Li Fan's skill in divination was on par with the well-known masters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. It seemed as though, apart from the Samantabhadra True Leaf event, Li Fan had other accomplishments. But when pressed for details, these people would clam up and adopt a, believe it or not, attitude. Li Fan's rise to prominence wasn't just due to his predictive ability. The real reason behind his fame was that Li Fan could help people get rich. The whole sect knew that He Zhenghao of the Kongyansi had handed over his contribution points to Li Fan for investment, and a year later, he received both principal and interest. Although it looked like a pyramid scheme on the surface, Li Fan's reputation as an expert in divination gave it credibility. Accumulating contribution points was incredibly difficult. A 50% return in 1 year was irresistible. Driven by temptation, more and more cultivators approached He Zhenghao, eager to join the next round of investments. There were so many inquiries that even He Zhenghao, who considered himself worldly, was overwhelmed. He ended up hiding on Luli Island behind the protective formation, too scared to come out. Only after contacting Li Fan and receiving his approval did he relax. Following Li Fan's advice, he issued a statement. Due to the overwhelming number of requests, which far exceeded Li Fan's ability to manage, He Zhenghao was forced to make a difficult decision. This time, they would only accept contribution points from 500 cultivators, sorted from the highest amount offered to the lowest. This announcement caused many cultivators to curse silently. Most hesitated briefly, then ultimately gave up. However, a small number of people placed their trust in Li Fan and invested their contribution points. With the introduction of this competitive system, the third round of contributions swelled to over 15 million. An average of 30,000 per person. And that was with everyone holding back and adopting a cautious approach. He Zhenghao was overwhelmed with joy as he collected the funds. Since Li Fan promised him 1% of the profit as a reward, he worked even harder. He even encouraged the investors to dig deeper into their pockets. While Li Fan was busy amassing wealth, the empire's foundation establishment masters were not idle either. Although the 10 million contribution points gifted by Li Fan allowed these lawbreakers to complete their tasks early, they continued to accumulate contribution points and resources to quietly transport them back to the empire. One day, a special guest arrived on the island. "I've saved for so long, it should be enough. With the help of this renowned foundation establishment master, I'll surely break through to the foundation establishment stage this time. Then, I will take control of my fate, defying even the heavens. The cultivation world may be vast, but I, Han Yi, will be able to roam freely." A disheveled young man, slightly crazed, stood outside the courtyard of the foundation establishment master, muttering to himself. Chapter 475. "You brat, what are you muttering about over there? You've been standing there for so long, are you coming in or not?" Li Chenfeng leaned against the wall, squinting at Han Yi with a hint of impatience in his voice. I'm coming. Startled by his own muttering, Han Yi reluctantly handed over a storage ring. 2,000 low-grade spirit stones, all inside, Han Yi said with a pained expression. "All right, follow me." Li Chenfeng, who had witnessed contributions worth tens of millions, was already unimpressed by mere contributions in the thousands. Still, even small gains are gains, Li Chenfeng thought as he pocketed the storage ring and led Han Yi to the presence of the foundation establishment master. Upon seeing the Venerable Master, who radiated a celestial and scholarly aura as he lectured, Han Yi's face lit up with excitement. He dared not disturb the master, carefully finding a seat and attentively listening to the lecture. Though some of the content was difficult to understand, Han Yi remained focused, not daring to miss a single word. After a long discourse, Han Yi, like the other students, closed his eyes and began to attempt his foundation establishment. Unbeknownst to the people on the island, the moment Han Yi stepped foot on the island, a gaze from across the majority of the Kongyuan Sea landed on him. "Taoist Han, I've been waiting for you for quite some time." Using a heavenly perspective locked on Li Chenfeng, Li Fan watched Han Yi, who sat cross-legged with closed eyes, with great interest. Has he accumulated this much? After breaking through the foundation establishment stage, will he control his fate, not leaving it to the heavens? Li Fan pondered over the meaning of Han Yi's words and recalled the strange moments in his past life, where Han Yi's fortune sometimes soared beyond comprehension, and at other times, was mediocre. A bold hypothesis began to form in Li Fan's mind. Could it be that Han Yi can control his own fortune? Moreover, after reaching foundation establishment, his control over luck will undergo a qualitative transformation. In that instant, Li Fan recalled his connection with the heavenly fate mystical bird from his past life. Could it be this similar? Interesting. Fixing his gaze tightly on Han Yi, Li Fan saw that in Han Yi's dantian, a black feather was slowly taking shape. This is. No matter how Li Fan looked at it, that feather was almost identical to the one that had once grown on his own body. The feather of the heavenly fate mystical bird. Even his foundation establishment treasure is the same. It seems there's no doubt about it, this really is connected to the heavenly fate mystical bird. Li Fan felt a slight tremor in his heart. If his previous guess was correct, the founder of the empire was Shu Ke, and the Saint Master was none other than the azure Luan bird from those times. What puzzled Li Fan, however, was that in Li Chenfeng's memories, there had been no trace of the mystic black bird in the empire. In theory, the heavenly fate mystical bird had a much closer connection to Shu Ke than the azure Luan bird that had appeared out of nowhere. So why had the black bird, which should have been Shu Ke's companion spirit beast, disappeared? If Li Fan could uncover the source of Han Yi's strange abilities, he might also learn the fate of the mystic black bird from those years ago. As time slowly passed, just as the heavenly fate mystic bird feather, in Han Yi's dantian was about to fully form. Ha, I did it! A cultivator sitting beside Han Yi suddenly stood up and shouted excitedly. Han Yi, deep in concentration, was distracted. The black feather in his mindscape began to scatter again. He furrowed his brows, just as he calmed his mind and was about to attempt forming his foundation once more. Another cultivator succeeded in forming his foundation. His aura surged, and he let out a long howl. Today, I realize who I truly am. Thank you, Master. The man laughed heartily, bowed to the Foundation Establishment Master, and flew away with pride. Han Yi's brows knitted even tighter as his foundation crumbled a bit further. After 10 years of hardship, I have finally succeeded. From this day forward, the heavens and the earth may be vast, but I, Nangong Qian, shall tread upon them freely. A scholar-like cultivator recited a poem before departing gracefully. Inside Han Yi's dantian, the image of the black feather from the mystic black bird shattered completely. Enough is enough. In a burst of anger, Han Yi spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, leaping to his feet and glaring around. But to his dismay, he realized he was now the only one left in the courtyard. The Foundation Establishment Master looked at him with pity and offered comfort. Young man, don't be discouraged. Although you failed this time, I can see you're very close to success. I'm certain you'll achieve Foundation Establishment next time. Hearing this, Han Yi was overwhelmed with emotion and spat out another mouthful of blood. The master kindly handed him a pill. The path of cultivation cannot be forced. I suggest you go home and recuperate. Next time, I'll only charge you 1,000 contribution points. Han Yi opened his mouth but said nothing. Though his heart was full of reluctance, he couldn't argue with the powerful Foundation Establishment Master. Swallowing the pill, Han Yi staggered out of the courtyard and flew away from the Foundation Establishment Island. He's truly out of luck, that Han Yi. It seems it's not yet time for his reversal of fortune. Li Fan's eyes flashed as he quietly left 10,000 Immortal Island, heading straight for Han Yi, who had been locked onto by his formless killing intent. Li Fan had made up his mind to use the soul-searching spell on Han Yi, to discover what secrets were hidden within him. After leaving the Foundation Establishment Island, Han Yi seemed severely shaken. Without direction or goal, he flew aimlessly. When he finally came to his senses, he found himself in an unfamiliar sea region. Damn it, just one tiny bit more. This cursed heaven. With no one around, Han Yi pointed angrily at the sky, venting his frustration. At that moment, the calm surface of the sea suddenly surged with enormous waves. It was as though something was rising from the depths of the ocean. Han Yi stared at the water with a strange expression. After looking around for a moment, he dove into the water. He continued to descend, deeper and deeper into the ocean. Eventually, he discovered the source of the disturbance. A massive hole had appeared in the ruins at the seabed. Countless gallons of seawater were being sucked into the hole, forming a gigantic whirlpool. Han Yi gazed at the whirlpool, his expression shifting. Finally, gritting his teeth, he was about to plunge headfirst into it. But at that very moment, insect binding, a faint voice echoed in his ears. Han Yi was horrified to find that he had completely lost control of his body, unable to move even a muscle. A shadowy figure appeared slowly behind him, exuding a dangerous aura that made Han Yi's heart sink. Just as the figure was about to place a hand on Han Yi's head, suddenly, several golden lights shot down from the surface of the water, not aimed at Han Yi, but at the shadow before him. The golden lights were incredibly powerful, forcing the shadow to dodge. Master Li, we've been searching for you everywhere. 4 black-clad cultivators, their forms concealed, appeared out of nowhere and surrounded the two. Chapter 476. Li Fan was slightly surprised as 4 cultivators suddenly appeared before him. Ever since he started using the title of Ancient Heavenly Mechanism Sect Cultivator to stir up the world, Li Fan had been extra cautious and vigilant. Whenever he went out, he would always use the secret technique, Shrouding Sky Palm, to hide his whereabouts. The secret technique, which had once been able to block even the Tianquan web's detection in his previous life, was truly extraordinary. Even in the vast 10,000 Immortal Alliance, many cultivators desired to see Li Fan, yet none had succeeded. But today, it seemed that a few uninvited guests had finally arrived. Who are you? Li Fan asked, not expecting them to answer honestly, but merely trying to buy some time. Sensing the aura emanating from the 4 black-clad cultivators, Li Fan felt slightly at ease. They were far weaker than Tianyang, likely at the nascent soul stage. What do you want with me? Li Fan asked, feigning ignorance. You'll know soon enough, one of them replied coldly. Form the formation. They stood in 4 corners, and each shot a golden light from the magical tools in their hands. The golden lines twisted and turned in the air, swiftly forming a dazzling array around Li Fan. It was like a massive golden bell, trapping Li Fan inside. Li Fan's eyes shifted slightly, and he tried to escape, only to find that the surrounding space seemed frozen, making it impossible to break free. Seal! The four shouted in unison. The golden bell shrank rapidly, getting smaller and smaller. Its golden outline was on the verge of binding Li Fan completely. Splitting light dragon trapping formation. Although trapped within the formation, Li Fan remained calm and composed. After several lifetimes of bitterly studying formations, he immediately recognized the formation that the four black-clad cultivators had deployed. This was one of the top restraining arrays in the world today, typically cast by at least 3 cultivators working together. The more cultivators involved, the more powerful the formation. Capturing someone of a higher realm was no difficult feat with it. Under normal circumstances, the combined strength of 4 nascent soul cultivators could easily capture even a soul transformation cultivator. But, Li Fan sneered inwardly, though he couldn't move, dozens of Great 5 Elements annihilation swords shot out from various parts of his body, unleashing destructive black light. Sensing the terrifying aura emanating from the black light, the 4 black-clad cultivators' expressions shifted slightly. Instinctively, they tried to dodge. But they soon realized in horror that the target of the black swords wasn't them, it was the critical nodes of the splitting light dragon trapping formation. Not good. One of the cultivators cried out in alarm. He finally realized that the black light emitted from Li Fan had struck each of the formation's key points with pinpoint accuracy. Boom! Golden and black lights clashed violently, and the once solid golden bell dimmed slightly in an instant. The unbreakable array had loosened. You dare show off your insignificant skills in front of an expert? As the light flickered, Li Fan's figure suddenly disappeared from the dragon trapping formation. He not only excels at deduction techniques, but also at formations. How is this possible? In that instant, the same thought flashed through the minds of the 4 black-clad cultivators. Our intel was wrong. Retreat! The lead cultivator shouted, but as they prepared to flee, they noticed something strange. The sky had suddenly darkened. It was as though a massive black cloud had blotted out the heavens. Then, dozens of golden lights shot out from the cloud at lightning speed, drawing an even larger golden bowl in the air, trapping the 4 cultivators inside. Splitting light dragon trapping formation. The black-clad cultivators' bodies trembled, their eyes filled with disbelief. Not only had their own technique been used against them, but the formation now trapping them seemed far more refined than the one they had originally cast, despite being slightly weaker in power. The formation was enhanced with an unknown improvement, making it even harder for them to break out. At this point, the 4 black-clad cultivators knew they had to give it their all. Inside the massive golden bowl, 4 unique cave heaven visions appeared, an isolated snow peak, a misty forest, a towering mountain, and a vast plain. Above them, beneath the black cloud and golden bowl, Li Fan stood, gazing down at the 4 nascent soul cultivators with a heart full of killing intent. These cultivators were not all experts in formations, they had relied on magical tools to assist them. Thus, the formation they had set up in haste naturally had flaws. Against ordinary cultivators, these flaws might not matter, but to Li Fan, the splitting light dragon trapping formation they had cast was riddled with weaknesses. After breaking out of the formation, Li Fan immediately retaliated. First, he activated the shrouding the sky palm secret technique to conceal the sky, isolating the area from any outside detection. Then, using the deception artifact he had purchased from the Tianquan mirror, he disrupted their talisman communication. Next, he set up the explosive method, shocking divine formation, temporarily boosting his techniques to the nascent soul stage. He then used the splitting light formation to trap them. When I was at the foundation establishment stage, I could already slay nascent soul cultivators. Now, with my cultivation at the late golden core stage, you 4 are nothing but easy prey. Sky flipping. A massive hand descended from the sky. Trapped within the golden bowl, the 4 cultivators were like fish in a barrel, with nowhere to run. The snow peak emitted a biting chill, the misty forest filled with ghostly wails, the towering mountain rushed towards them, and smoke rose from the plain. The cave heaven visions evolved as the 4 cultivators unleashed all their powers. 4 beams of light intertwined and merged, colliding with the sky-flipping palm. But it was futile. Like paper, it was instantly torn apart. The giant palm pressed down, and amid their screams, the 4 cultivators' bodies shattered inch by inch. The cave heaven visions reappeared, and their blood and flesh wriggled, reforming their bodies. The residual force of the sky-flipping palm ignored their bodies and instead smashed into the 4 cave heavens. Boom! The cave heavens shook violently, and it seemed like the end of the world had come. Massive cracks appeared in the cave heaven domains as mountains collapsed, trees in the misty forest fell, and the plain split open. It seemed as though the 4 cave heavens were about to be completely destroyed in the next moment. However, the black-clad cultivators were highly coordinated. In this life and death moment, none of them hesitated. They pushed their powers to the limit and, working together, they barely managed to withstand the sky-flipping palm. The giant palm's shadow dissipated, and the trembling cave heavens slowly began to stabilize. The 4 cultivators, still pale and shaken, quickly absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy to heal their injured cave heavens. They also consumed medicinal pills as they searched for Li Fan's whereabouts. The power of that technique was immense. Li Fan must have expended a great deal of energy as well. We should seize this opportunity to break the dragon trapping formation. This person is not as simple as he appears. He may have already recovered from his injuries. Exactly. We must send this information back. He could be the bait set by the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. As they hastily healed themselves, they communicated with their spiritual senses. Chapter 477. Strange, where did he go? As their injuries slowly healed, the 4 individuals searched around but couldn't find any trace of Li Fan. Could he have exhausted his energy, realized he was no match for us, and retreated first? A hint of confusion flashed across the faces of the black-clad cultivators from the 5 Elders Association. Judging from the power of that palm strike just now, it's very likely. One strike almost shattered our 4 cave heavens. Even if he is incredibly strong, using such a technique should have caused considerable backlash. That might not be the case. Ancient cultivators are skilled in battle, and it's clear Li Fan was hiding something earlier. Either way, let's be cautious. First, we need to break this formation. The 4 exchanged glances and began to attack the splitting light dragon trapping formation that Li Fan had set up. It seemed as though the formation was no longer controlled by a cultivator, and its previously impenetrable defenses had become incredibly weak. The massive golden bowl wobbled precariously in an instant. Overjoyed, the 4 accelerated their attacks. Just as the formation was completely shattered, a golden rain began to fall from the sky. The 4 were enveloped, and dazzling rays of light reflected off the falling gold. As the golden light shone brightly, they couldn't help but squint. Be careful. At that moment, the leading cultivator suddenly shouted a warning. Before the words even left his mouth, accompanied by a booming sound, some of the golden rain around them suddenly exploded. A terrifying energy surged from the center of the explosion, sweeping in all directions. There were as many as 16 or 17 sources disguised as golden light. They completely surrounded the members of the 5 Elders Association. Sky-shattering gilded thunder. Amidst their angry and shocked voices, the spots of gilded thunder instantly transformed into rings of light, completely engulfing them. Boom, boom, boom. The earth-shattering explosions echoed across the sea. It was unclear how long had passed before everything settled. In the shattered remains of their cave heavens, the bodies of the few cultivators began to slowly, painfully regenerate. Truly despicable. I knew he hadn't gone far. Their faces were full of lingering fear as they quickly scanned the surroundings, but still, there was no sign of Li Fan. Don't get tangled up with him anymore. We need to retreat. The leading cultivator gritted his teeth. Collecting their cave heaven's powers, they no longer cared about anything else and swiftly fled toward the outskirts of Yongliang State on the edge of the Kongyan Sea. They flew for a long time, and the coastline of Yongliang State was already in sight. Li Fan did not reappear. It seemed as though he had given up chasing them. The 4 finally let out a long sigh of relief. However, recalling their brush with death, something still felt off. 6th brother, don't you think Li Fan was deliberately toying with us? Quote. The black-clad cultivator, codenamed 6th brother, remained silent for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. I hate to admit it, but based on what happened, something indeed feels strange. After that one palm strike, he could have easily used the gilded thunder to end our lives. But he waited until we recovered before attacking again. It's as if he was deliberately giving us a chance to breathe. Another black-clad cultivator chimed in, we were severely injured just now. If he had attacked even casually, he could have killed us. But instead, he let us go. What is he up to? The 4 looked at each other, completely baffled. This Li Fan is an ancient cultivator who has been in slumber for thousands of years, having only recently awakened. It's clear that someone like him wouldn't have much loyalty to the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, sixth brother mused aloud. You mean? The other three's eyes lit up. He figured out that we are from the Five Elders Association and wants to build good relations, so he spared our lives. Very possible. So that's it. Does that mean we can convince him to defect and join the Five Elders Association? Sixth brother suddenly had a clever idea. According to the information we gathered, he was the one who first derived the prophecy of the Tianxuan spirit locking and the unification of the Zanhuang realm. If we can win him over, not only will we avoid punishment for failing this mission, but we could also claim a great reward. Hearing this, the others were tempted. But in the end, reason prevailed over their desires. The leading cultivator said, let's return and report this first. This person exudes strangeness, and we can't take any chances. Another black-clad cultivator nodded in agreement. Sixth brother sighed, feeling a sense of loss. It's a shame. This person's whereabouts are unpredictable. Tracking him will be quite difficult. Another person added, yes, if it hadn't been for this mission and our coincidental encounter with him, we might never have gotten the chance. After all, he is a cultivator from the Heavenly Mechanism sect, proficient in the art of deduction. It's normal for him to counter and block deduction spells. As they spoke, they drew closer to Yongliang's state. Gradually, they sensed something was wrong with their surroundings. Although the coastline seemed just within reach, no matter how much they flew, they remained over the Kanyan Sea, unable to close the distance. Even more terrifying, the scene of Yongliang's state appeared blurry upon closer inspection. It was as if it wasn't real, but merely an illusion. The four stopped flying, their faces growing solemn as they stared ahead. Moments later, the leading black-clad cultivator gasped in shock. No. It's an illusion. What? The others were stunned, and after a moment of realization, they began to re-examine their surroundings in horror. The clouds, wind, and waves. Everything around them suddenly froze. Then, like a cracked glass mirror, the entire scene shattered. The sound of the sky-shattering gilded thunder echoed faintly in their ears, and their cave heavens and bodies remained utterly wrecked, still drenched in blood. Time had not moved since the moment Li Fan had ambushed them with the gilded thunder. He took advantage of the moment when our cave heavens were under attack and our minds were confused to pull us into an illusion. Sixth brother finally realized and cried out in shock. Deduction techniques, formations, illusions. As expected of an ancient cultivator. The leading cultivator coughed and remarked through gritted teeth. He tried to draw on his cave heavens, absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy, but was horrified to find that an array had already been set up, turning the entire area into a spiritual vacuum. There was no way for nascent soul cultivators to quickly restore their bodies using their cave heavens' power. Impressive technique. He stared into the sky. There, Li Fan's figure slowly appeared. There, Li Fan's figure slowly emerged. Was it just a coincidence? Li Fan frowned slightly, muttering softly. With his skills, he could have easily slaughtered the four cultivators from the Five Elders Association long ago. The reason he had gone through so much effort was to use the cloud and water illusion technique to probe their minds and discover how they had noticed him this time. However, what he hadn't expected was such an absurd answer. Without further hesitation, the Five Elements Annihilation Sword swept out continuously. The four cultivators from the Five Elders Association, already seriously injured, resisted briefly before meeting a tragic end under Li Fan's sword. An ominous phenomenon of fallen cultivators appeared above them, but Li Fan paid it no mind. Because he had just realized that during his fight with the Five Elders Association cultivators, a powerful suction had erupted from the giant whirlpool at the bottom of the sea, pulling Han Yi, who had been restrained by the insect binding, into a deep hole within the ruins. Fate. Li Fan stood before the whirlpool, a contemplative look in his eyes. Chapter 478. I've always been careful, but this time I was accidentally discovered by a spy from the Five Elders Association. And Han Yi, who was originally doomed to have his soul searched, managed to escape because of it. Those with favorable fortune find everything goes smoothly, those with unfavorable fortune find everything goes wrong. This is the power of fate. Li Fan finally began to understand the pain Song Yang experienced in the fallen immortal realm when he sought the heavenly fate mystic bird from Shukai. Gazing at the rapidly rotating vortex amidst the ruins, Li Fan hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided not to pursue it. A deep sense of foreboding told him that forcibly chasing it would lead to no good outcome. The depths of the vortex were absolutely not ordinary small mortal worlds, devoid of extraordinary power, like the worlds of Outer Realm or Great Zon. Forget it, the monk may run, but the temple won't disappear. The target was locked by the formless killing intent, but he had temporarily lost track of Han Yi. Once Han Yi returned to the Xuanwang realm, Li Fan would immediately be alerted. He returned to the surface of the sea, where the 4 cultivators from the 5 Elders Association had been utterly annihilated by the 5 Elements Annihilation Sword, leaving not a trace behind. Li Fan took out the image recording stone, capturing the scene in the sky before leisurely heading back to 10,000 Immortal Island. The simultaneous fall of 4 nascent soul cultivators was a spectacular sight, and the strange phenomenon lingered for a long time. Even though this part of the sea was remote, it still attracted many cultivators who came to observe. After seeing the vision, they were shocked. 4 nascent soul true lords had fallen at once. What shocked them even more was that the culprit was the same person. And that person was none other than the famous deduction master of Kongyun Si, an ancient cultivator of the Heavenly Mechanism sect, Li Fan. Their hearts were filled with even more confusion. Wasn't Li Fan said to have had his cultivation drop to the golden core stage after being in slumber for thousands of years? How could he single-handedly kill 4 nascent soul cultivators? Wasn't he only skilled in deduction? How could his combat strength be so terrifying? These 4 nascent soul cultivators were unfamiliar, no one had ever heard of them. Who were they? And what kind of enmity did they have with Master Li, leading him to kill them? With countless doubts, they hurriedly spread this explosive news to their friends and acquaintances. Soon, word of Li Fan's slaying of 4 nascent soul cultivators spread throughout Kongyun Si. At the Martial Hall on 10,000 Immortal Island. Are you here to claim a reward? The receptionist cultivator looked at Li Fan, puzzled. What reward? I remember that there is a reward for successfully killing spies from the 5 Elders Association, right? Li Fan patiently asked. As he spoke, he took out the image recording stone and played the footage he had just recorded. I killed 4 nascent soul cultivators from the 5 Elders Association, Li Fan said seriously. Cough, cough, the cultivator at the Martial Hall immediately coughed violently. He snatched the image recording stone, watching it repeatedly in disbelief. After a while, he looked at Li Fan, shocked, and said, "You. Please wait a moment." With that, he staggered and hurried into the depths of the Martial Hall. What did you say? Voices of astonishment could faintly be heard. Not long after, Li Fan was respectfully invited into the reception hall of the Martial Hall. Li Fan sat down casually. Before long, a group of cultivators poured into the hall. Master Li, we have just confirmed that the images in the recording are authentic, said a nascent soul cultivator dressed in yellow robes, still with traces of blood on him, standing before Li Fan with some trepidation. May I ask, have you recovered your former cultivation level? He asked, looking at Li Fan expectantly. Li Fan took a sip of spiritual tea, savoring it before putting down the cup. He shook his head slowly and said, recovered my full cultivation? No, of course not. I'm still at the late stage of golden core, isn't it obvious? The hall fell into sudden silence. The yellow-robed cultivator was dumbfounded. After a moment, he asked somewhat irritably, then how did you kill those 4 nascent soul cultivators from the 5 Elders Association? Li Fan slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone. He swept his gaze over them disdainfully and said, what era are we living in? Do you think killing someone requires personal combat? During ancient times, sects guarded their resources selfishly, raising prices for their own gain. High-level artifacts, talismans, and such were extremely expensive, and difficult to obtain. But now, with the Immortal Alliance controlling half of the Xuanwang realm, and the Tianquan Mirror coordinating everything, there's no more hoarding of treasures by greedy merchants. Nowadays, high-damage, disposable artifacts, formation, and talismans are as cheap as dirt. Li Fan shook his head, saying, having just woken up from slumber, naturally, I needed to secure my survival. It's only sensible to buy some of these items for emergencies, right? After Li Fan's explanation, the yellow-robed cultivator finally understood. He was dumbfounded and said, so, you relied on external objects to kill these 4 nascent soul cultivators. Li Fan raised an eyebrow. What, you don't believe me? With a casual gesture, he pulled out several sky-shattering gilded thunders from his storage ring and placed them on the table. The Martial Hall became chaotic in an instant. Li Fan, however, didn't stop. Furious Flames Annihilation Formation, 8 Desolations Silent Thunder, soul-fixing needle, demon-sealing banner. One by one, valuable and powerful killing tools were taken out and piled before the crowd. The martial hall fell completely silent. The cultivators present turned pale as they stared at the pile of single-use weapons, stacked like a small mountain. And with these, is it enough? Li Fan asked casually. If not, it's fine, I've got even more powerful ones, he added indifferently. The yellow-robed cultivator wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and quickly said, that's enough. That's enough. Master Li, please put these things away. If they accidentally went off here, it would be a disaster. Hearing this, Li Fan nodded in satisfaction and waved to store his weapons back. Seeing this, the cultivators in the martial hall finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although these weapons were mass-produced by the Tianquan mirror and their power reduced, their high quality and sheer quantity made up for it. If these were unleashed, not even a nascent soul cultivator, maybe even a soul transformation true monarch, would survive. It's said that this man, with his deduction abilities, can easily accumulate wealth. Now I see it's true. Being rich is truly a blessing. This pile of items is worth more than our team's half-year budget. I heard you can invest through He Zhenghao. Maybe we should consider it. For a while, the crowd in the martial hall was lost in thought. Now that everything's clear, let's discuss my reward. I spent quite a bit of money dealing with those black-clothed cultivators from the Five Elders Association. I shouldn't be left at a loss, right? Li Fan took another sip of tea and glanced at the group slowly.